we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Hello and welcome. I'm Alastair Stewart, and for the next 3 hours I'll be keeping you company with the stories that really matter all across the country. Plenty coming up. We'll be talking about care, social care, residential care. The government has new plans to reform the system, but in truth, are we being sold a pup? Plus, we'll be talking China, Formula One and a whole lot more. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the news, and here is Simon Pusey.
Thank you very much, Alastair. Yes, I'm Simon Pusey. This is your news at 12 o'clock. There's been a second night of violence in the Netherlands, with dozens of people being arrested in The Hague. Protesters set fire in the streets and threw fireworks at police as they demonstrated against tough new COVID measures. It comes a day after riots in Rotterdam, where at least 7 people were injured. Thousands of people have also been demonstrating across other European countries, including Austria, Italy and Croatia.
So, for example, look at Austria going down the lines of mandatory vaccination. They would justify any challenge in the ECHR on the grounds of proportionality, and health and national security are pretty much universally permitted by the Human Rights Court to justify interventions.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been sacked as Manchester United manager. That's after the club held an emergency board meeting following the team's 4-1 loss to Watford yesterday. United have suffered 5 league defeats in 7 matches. Coach Michael Carrick will take charge while the club looks for an interim manager for the rest of the season. The Foreign Office says China must provide verifiable evidence that the tennis player Peng Shuai is safe and well. The latest video posted by Chinese state media appears to show her at a tennis tournament in Beijing. Fellow players, the UN and the White House have also voiced their concern for the welfare of the former Wimbledon doubles champion. She disappeared after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official 3 weeks ago. More migrants, including young children, have crossed the Channel in the past 24 hours. Official figures haven't been confirmed, but it's believed hundreds made the journey. More than 24,700 people have arrived in the UK so far this year, almost 3 times more than in 2020. Former Chief Immigration Officer Kevin Sanders told GB News solutions are needed or the situation will only get worse.
I feel that probably we need to come up with the offshore processing centres. That will send a message to the migrants. It will certainly stop them coming across the Channel because they won't want to be flown off to Albania or somewhere else. 25,000 crossings this year. And if we don't do something, it'll be 100,000 next year.
The UK's Brexit minister says the country will need to safeguard its position in other ways if it's not able to reach an agreement with the EU over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Lord Frost says there's momentum for the government to secure a solution based on consensus following a meeting in Brussels with the European Commission Vice President. It comes hours after protests gathered at the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic demanding post-Brexit arrangements to be protected. Author and political commentator Kevin Marr told GB News the UK is still weighing up the EU's proposals.
Some of it is, can that process be smooth? Now, the European Union is saying, look, we're prepared to reduce paperwork checks by 50% and checks on goods coming in by 80%. And that should ensure that there is much more smooth trading between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The question really for Lord Frost, the government's Brexit negotiator and the minister leading negotiations with the European Union and his counterpart, Maroš Šefčovič, is that broadly enough?
Over 40s will be able to book their COVID booster jab from tomorrow in England. NHS England says around 500,000 people in the age bracket are eligible for the third dose. The government is encouraging people to take the jab to prevent another wave of cases. A leaked report also suggests vaccines could be given to children under the age of 12 from next year. The Health Secretary is ordering a review into whether medical devices are biased against race or gender. New research suggests oximeters, which are devices clipped to your finger, can overstate the level of oxygen in the blood of those from ethnic minorities. Ministers are trying to find out if the bias could have stopped patients receiving appropriate COVID treatment. Sajid Javid says any bias is totally unacceptable. And a UK first in Portsmouth, where a zebra crossing has been introduced that lights up as people approach. LED panels are triggered by sensors, making it more visible to drivers and safer for pedestrians. If the lighting system proves successful, the concept could be replicated across other parts of the city. And that's it from me for now. You're right up to date. I'll bring you the latest headlines in half an hour. Now it's back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Simon, thanks very much indeed. Coming up this afternoon on Alastair Stewart and Friends, today we are talking about care, social care, residential care. Most of us will end up needing it, but who pays for it and how do we decide? The government's come up with new plans to reform the system, but I'm asking whether we have been sold a pup on care. And there are growing concerns about human rights issues in China. There have been fears over the well-being of the tennis star Peng Shuai, who went missing after making sexual assault allegations against a top Communist Party official. And there are new reports out today about the genocide of Uyghur Muslims in China. So we'll have more on that with an MP and a member of the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, Tim Lawton. We'll also be getting all the latest from the world of Formula One as the Qatar Grand Prix gets underway very shortly. But first, I think we need to talk about care. Not least because more and more of us are quite likely to end up needing it. It's been a political hot potato for ages, with one government after another government promising to sort it out. Well, back in 2019, in his first speech as Prime Minister, Boris Johnson became the latest. He promised to fix the crisis in social care once and for all. The fix took a while to arrive, but in September this year, he said that from 2023, no one in England would pay more than £86,000 in care fees during their lifetime. You'd pay what was judged fair from your own resources, if you had them, but no more than that £86,000 ceiling. Once you reach the cap, costs for personal care will be paid by local authorities. Now, people with less than £20,000 won't have to contribute to care costs, whilst those with between £20,000 and £100,000 will get means-tested help towards costs from their local council. Now, 2 days ago, ministers dropped a bit of a bombshell. They said that support payments from local councils will not count towards that personal limit, that cap. It'll be as if you never got it, leaving more of your own resources vulnerable. Well, Sir Andrew Dilnot, who devised the original 2011 idea of a cap on costs to prevent people losing homes to soaring social care costs, said he was very disappointed. The change, he said, would leave anyone with assets of less than £186,000, and that is about 60% of older people needing care, less well off than expected. Dilnot had been pleased when the cap came in at £86,000, a much, much higher figure than he'd suggested a decade ago. But this small change, he said, was good for the wealthy and bad for the poor. To be fair, it'll save the government, and you and me, the taxpayer, hundreds of millions of pounds. But it will leave many poorer homeowners exposed to what one analyst called catastrophic costs, including the need to sell their homes to cover long-term care. But there's another big worry for everyone in the overall plan that's due to come into force in just 2 years' time. The cap only covers personal care, not living costs such as food, energy bills or accommodation. It's true that if your needs are primarily health-based, the NHS can pay for your care under what's called the NHS Continuing Healthcare Plan. But it's not automatic, and by definition it excludes many folk whose only problems are age, frailty and perhaps solitude. Now, in my own experience, the cost that is most likely to wipe out savings and force the sale of homes is that accommodation cost. There's another issue too, that we've often talked about on this programme. To what degree is it the responsibility of the state anyway? How far should we go in bailing out the haves who haven't done their best to plan for the inevitable? Caps and contributions are part of that equation, but others may say, sorry, if you've got the money or the wealth tied up in a house, you're on your own. So, today I'm asking, who really pays for care? Do you know what you'll face if you end up in care? In an effort to reform the system for the better, have we ended up being sold a pup? Looks good, but isn't really. Are many of us still going to have to see our homes sold to help keep us in care? Now, as always, I want to hear what you think. And first thing this morning, I mentioned on Twitter that this is what we were talking about today, and we've already been inundated. So keep it coming. You can get in touch on email via gbnews@gbnews.uk or Twitter, Instagram, Facebook and all the rest of it. Couldn't start this conversation with a better person, someone I've known and admired for a very, very long time, Baroness Ros Altman, former Minister of State for Pensions, but an overall expert in all matters financial as far as the elderly are concerned. Ros, it's great of you to join us this Sunday afternoon. Last week, you wrote to the Times newspaper saying, and I quote, I've taken two bits of it, not the whole thing, brilliant letter though it was. This is what you said. The announcement that the much-trumpeted social care reforms are being watered down is the latest sign suggesting that poorer, older citizens' lives are no longer a serious concern for the government. Despite promises of radical reform, Britain's ageing population still faces a care crisis. Why specifically, Ros, will these new measures not ensure the elderly and disabled in our society are properly cared for?
Well, actually, you described it extremely well, Alastair, because what we are being told is that people will have to pay a maximum of £86,000 for care. That's just not true. Most people, if they were to ever reach the cap, they would have already spent well over £150,000 because they will have had to pay for their own accommodation, board and lodging and so on. And also, if somebody wants to live in a care home, perhaps that is nearer to their family or of a better standard than the council would itself use, any extra money that costs doesn't count towards the cap either. So what you have is a system that seems to protect the assets of the very well-off older people, while wiping out much or all of the accumulated savings and assets that people in, let's say, the middle class or the working class will have built up through their lives. And this only affects those people who get ill in later life in the wrong way. Because again, as you said, there are some cases, such as if you get cancer or if you have perhaps a stroke, where the NHS will pick up all the tab. So you can be a millionaire with cancer and the taxpayer picks up the whole bill, but you can be an elderly widow who lives in a modest home and you pay everything yourself until you've used up virtually the whole value of the house. So there is something seriously wrong in the way we are tackling this care crisis, and it is a crisis. Nobody has prepared or set aside money to help fund care. The government hasn't, local authorities haven't, individual families haven't. So we have a system where more and more people will become elderly and frail and won't be able to look after themselves, but we haven't got the money set aside to actually help them.
The government also points out, in response to that analysis, which, as it happens, I completely share, and folk watching this programme will hear me say it at 2 o'clock. But to be fair to ministers and to the government, and I always try to do that as well, this measure, excluding the contribution that social security payments would make and what have you, would save the government £900 million. We are in tough times. The NHS is in need of money. £900 million is not to be sniffed at.
Well, again, this isn't the way to look at it, because the money that is being saved is being taken away from the traditional British household who isn't extraordinarily well off. And the same is true, actually, of this plan to fund an extra payment for the NHS, which might then later on go into social care, by raising national insurance. Once more, the extra costs of that fall much more heavily on lower income people than on higher income people. And pensioners with extremely generous pensions won't pay anything towards this extra cost because it's not an income tax, it's national insurance, which they don't pay on their pensions. And if you have buy-to-let property as your wealth, again, you won't pay anything extra towards care. My belief is that what we really need in society is a system where everybody contributes something towards the cost of later life care. Most people would hope not to need that extra care, but they pay towards it just in case. At the moment, all the costs fall on the people who get ill until they have no money left, or virtually no money left. And then, if they're lucky, the council will step in. But councils don't have enough money, so they're rationing care. You don't get any help at all until your needs are substantial. And this idea of saving money to taxpayers actually doesn't stand up to scrutiny either, because if we don't look after the increasing numbers of frail elderly people at a relatively earlier stage, or help them find the money to do so, then there will be extra costs on taxpayers, because inevitably they will fall more and more into the NHS. So what we are seeing is a supposed solution that won't solve the problem, and extra resources being taken away from the middle British person who I don't believe should be forced to stump up extra if they get ill, while others who have much more resources than them are bailed out by this new cap and don't lose much of their accumulated wealth.
Final point, and I tempt you as an impartial expert and observer of these matters, but I completely agree with that economic analysis. But it is the political ineptitude of not having the guts to tell people what the real truth is that leaves them at their most vulnerable time in life conned by a big, fat pup.
Well, that is the big danger here, that this is actually supposed to be a solution which doesn't solve anything. So it's not actually a proper solution. And there are ways in which we could help to resolve the care crisis. And for those baby boomers, the sort of people entering their 70s now, who will be the first to supposedly benefit from this system, actually what they might be better off enjoying is some incentives to use the accumulated pension wealth or their ISAs. Millions of people have got ISAs which they haven't decided anything to do with yet. If they have spent that money before they reach their 80s and need money for care, they may bitterly regret that. Let's give them some actual tax incentives to not spend their ISAs, to have maybe a care ISA that will cover the costs that we know are coming, and also look after people in a decent, civilized way. Our current care system, with staff shortages and inadequate council payments and 10-minute visits that are supposed to look after people who are in their own homes, for example. None of this is really what elderly people deserve in a rich, developed country. Now, the government I have sympathy with, because none of this is easy. And it is not one government's fault. Successive governments have ducked this issue and pass the hot potato onto the next lot of politicians. But we're running out of time. And I think now is the time where people would perhaps be willing to have a grown-up conversation about how we look after elderly people as people get older in our country, and where the money will come from. It's not going to magic up. And I don't think people would have objected if the government said, we're going to put an extra, let's say, 2p on income tax for everybody, including pensioners who've got good pensions or people with buy-to-let properties. Everybody pays something into the system, and then we can hopefully deliver a much better quality of care and save some of the strain on the NHS with a system that has integration, proper integration between what is currently an artificially called social care and NHS healthcare, which is somehow different, and everybody gets that for free, whereas with the so-called second-class social care, we have a system that actually doesn't look after people in the way they need. And we know that already at least 1 million elderly people who need care are not getting it.
All right. Ros, great to talk to you, and thank you very much indeed for that informed, tough analysis and for your opinion. Good to see you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Thank you for your time. That's Baroness Ros Altman, former Minister of State for Pensions, reading the Riot Act. Be prepared to lose £150,000 through accommodation charges. The cap is a myth, but everybody should make a contribution to something. Build up a private pension fund, but let's have some honesty and some candour from Her Majesty's government. Next up, I'm delighted to be joined by Caroline Abrahams, who's the director of the charity Age UK. Caroline, I know where you're coming from on this, but I'm going to start with something that Ros said, which is tough love for you and for the people that you speak for. The government needs to be candid, but we also, if we can afford to, need to be more prepared for our old age, particularly if we're going to be going into care. We need to examine our wealth, our savings, our income, and stand ready to make a contribution.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think when we talk to older people, they agree too that if people can afford it, they should contribute to a system. But it doesn't really work for everybody to save their own money in a little pot and then draw on it later on, because care is so expensive that unless you are extremely well off, you're unlikely to be able to save enough to have that put by if you do need care for a long time. That was the whole point of Andrew Dilnot's idea, which is that we all share the risk of having to develop those care needs, because not all of us will. Some of us won't need care at all. Some will need a bit. A few will need a lot. And it's the latter group that really get hit at the moment. And his idea was, well, let's contribute. Really, Ros was saying the same thing. Let's contribute through our lives to in one way or other. And then there's a big pot for the whole country, a bit like we have for the NHS. And it does make a lot more sense, I think.
Do you agree also with my point and to a degree Ros's point that the real problem is not the numbers or the level of cap or what have you, it is the lack of honesty and clarity from ministers and officials in briefing, talking to me, I'm 69, you're younger than I am, there are others who are older than both of us. Yeah, this is what you need to stand ready to do rather than pretending that, oh, this is the magic wand.
Well, it certainly isn't a magic wand. And, is it a pup or not? Yeah, it definitely is a pup. It was always going to be a pup, even before the government made its latest sort of change of drawing money out of the system. And that's because it only deals with one problem, which is this problem if you need care a long time and have to pay a lot for it. But as Ros said at the end of her interview, the bigger problem really is lots of older people can't get any care at all. And if they can get it, it's not very good. And that's because there's just not enough money in the system. And above all, that's down to the Treasury. And people like us watched the spending review with incredible interest and were hoping very much that the Chancellor would be generous to social care. But he wasn't. And so the end result is we've got this not very good solution that the government's tried to say will sort the problem out on the back of a really underfunded system. And it's a recipe for disaster and just for letting people down. So anybody who was hoping that things were going to be much better for them in future, unless they are extremely well off and need care for a long time and can take advantage of the cap, it looks like they're going to be very, very badly let down. And I don't think you can say to the British public and to older people, we're going to solve this problem for the future, and then a couple of months later say, oh, no, sorry, we're not going to do that now. We're going to take a big chunk of the money out. I just don't think that's just not fair. And it's not very reasonable either. And I think I agree with Ros. Obviously, we all deserve better than that.
Sure. I said to Ros as well that I early this morning I said, if you care about care, you need to care about care on my Twitter line, and we're going to be talking about it to you and to her and indeed to others. And my timeline went alive. I mean, so much stuff, and we'll be sharing some of that back. Is it also playing big on your helplines and people who get in touch with you seeking help or guidance? Or is the real problem that an awful lot of your, as it were, potential customers, and excuse me for using that expression, but you know what I mean because we've talked about it before, they don't know what's about to hit them in 2023?
I think that's right. And the real problem is that nothing's going to hit anyone in 2023. All that's going to happen is that the scheme starts then. But remember that even, as Andrew has said himself, it will take 3 years for someone to reach the cap. So it only starts in 2023. You wouldn't get any help until 2026. So it's absolutely miles off. And for, sadly, many older people who need care now, that'll be far too late for them. This is much more about what's going to happen to people in the future. So there's really no relief for older people today, or older people who just typically need care for maybe 18 months in a care home. That's the average length of tenure. So I'm afraid that tells us that this isn't only a pup, but it's a pup that doesn't even come into existence for a few years' time. It has been oversold, I think, by the government, I think one could fairly say.
Abrahams, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for breaking into your Sunday afternoon to share some more time with me. Good to see you. That's Caroline Abrahams, Director of Age UK, brilliant charity out there, not only on care, but dealing with all issues that face older people, doing a great job for them as well. Plenty still to come on that subject and much more. After the break, we'll be talking China with MP Tim Loughton. But first, let's have a look at the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Sorry, we had a little problem there with the weather. We will bring you it a little bit later on. My apologies for that. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News. Now, there are growing concerns this week about human rights abuses in China, particularly after a Chinese tennis star went missing. Peng Shuaiwei disappeared after accusing a former top government official of sexual assault on social media. Footage was released overnight of the player allegedly at a tennis tournament yesterday, but it has done little to allay concerns. Human rights issues in China have long been a source of controversy, and earlier this year, UK MPs declared that a genocide was taking place against Uyghur Muslims in the country. Well, joining me now is one of them, the Conservative MP Tim Loughton, who is a member of the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China and was, as I say, among those MPs and was sanctioned by China earlier this year. Talk about that for a little bit, Tim, just to give folk at home the context of it. So this is a group not only of UK MPs, but MPs in other democratic parliaments who are prepared to speak out against what's going on in China, who then get cancelled.
That's right. Good afternoon, Alastair. So I was one of 7 British parliamentarians earlier this year, 5 Conservative MPs, a Labour member of the Lords and a crossbencher in the Lords, who summarily was on a list of people who were, as you say, cancelled. We were sanctioned by China, which apparently means we are not allowed to travel to China. All our assets are frozen in China. Not that any of us have any, and we can't have any business links with China. We've never actually been told that. I've never received a letter from the Chinese government or Chinese embassy saying you are cancelled, don't try and come to China or anything. It was just a press release. And that happened to a number of other parliamentarians from around the world at various stages this year and last year, including American senators, French, Italian, members of European Parliament as well, who are on the blacklist. And our only crime is that we've done our job as parliamentarians. We've got up in Parliament and called out China for its whole-scale abuse of human rights, ending in genocide of the Uyghurs, as has now been recognised by the British Parliament quite rightly.
Sure. So I'm guessing, in a sense, Tim, that when this brilliant young tennis star, well, not young, I mean, she's been around for a wee while, but Peng said that she had been sexually abused by a senior member of the ruling Communist Party. I mean, she too was disappeared, allegedly now back, but virtually nobody out there believes the video clips. You speak out, you speak your truth, you're disappeared.
And that's just one high-profile example, and we hope she's safe, and we will see what transpires from this. But over the years, many ordinary Chinese citizens, journalists, politicians who've dared to speak out have been disappeared, end up in jail. I've been a big champion of the Tibetan people for many years. I chair the All-Party Parliamentary Tibetan Group, which is another reason why no doubt the Chinese government want to cancel me. But if you are a Tibetan citizen within Tibet, just carrying a photograph of the Dalai Lama, the spiritual leader of Tibetans, you'll end up with a jail sentence of several years. I mean, they just do not tolerate any criticism, and that's why many of us have called for, and again Parliament voted for, a diplomatic boycott of the forthcoming Beijing Olympics, which incredibly the International Olympic Committee awarded to Beijing, despite all the publicity about the human rights abuses, despite what's going on with genocide and everything else. It's just inconceivable that we should be sending VIPs to this propaganda exercise in Beijing next February.
And the issue that got you into trouble, in inverted commas, with the Chinese, the plight of the Uyghur people, a brilliant 2-page spread in today's Mail by Ian Birrell, who is no amateur in these matters.
Yeah.
The most worrying thing, I mean, Johnson can throw, we won't go to the Olympics and this, that and the other. But there's virtually nothing that we seem to be able to do. They're a mighty world superpower, about to be the biggest economy in the world, and they just do their own thing. That in itself is not worrying, it's terrifying.
It is terrifying, and there's another Sunday newspaper today which has got a supplement with, I think the headline is "The World's Greatest Dictator," with a picture of President Xi and all about his rise to power, and he's there for life, and it's a completely totalitarian regime. So there are things we can do, and the first thing we have to do is to stand up to them. I mean, far too long, I'm afraid, Western governments, including our own, under David Cameron, the great age of enlightenment with close relationships with China, just completely played into their hands because we wanted more investment from China to come to the UK. But it comes with conditions, and we shouldn't have it. So we need to call them out. So on this issue of genocide, parliaments around the world have voted to describe it as genocide, which has annoyed the Chinese. It looks as though the Americans are about to call and follow through a diplomatic boycott of the Olympics. The EU Parliament has voted for that. So we must call them out. But secondly, we must put conditions on dealing with China in the future. And that's why we tried to add to our trade bill that we should not be constructing trade deals with governments who are guilty of genocide. And the government on the back of that has brought in restrictions on British companies dealing with businesses in Xinjiang province where there's a suspicion that products have been produced using Uyghur slave labour. So there are restrictions that are coming in, but we've got to go far further. And frankly, everybody has got to stop buying Chinese goods. That is where they really take notice. That hits them in the pocket, and that's the only thing that's really going to achieve a change in the way China regards its own citizens, but also with arrogance regards the rest of the world.
Great to talk to you and good to see you again. And thank you for trying again after we did try yesterday, but we had a hiccup with the signal for which
it worked the second time, honestly. Yeah.
Lovely study. It works perfectly from there. Thank you so much for those thoughts, Tim, and for finding time for us this Sunday afternoon. That's Tim Lawton, member of the Inter-Parliamentary Alliance on China, and also here at home, Conservative Member of Parliament for East Worthing and Shoreham. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends. Plenty more still to come this afternoon, including I'll be catching up with a cause very close to my heart, the Ebony Horse Club, which had a famous visitor yesterday. But first, let's bring you up to date with all of the latest news headlines with Simon.
Thank you, Alastair. I'm Simon Pusey. Here are your latest headlines. There's been a second night of violence in the Netherlands, with dozens of people being arrested in The Hague. Protesters set fires in the streets and threw fireworks at police as they demonstrated against tough new COVID measures. It comes a day after riots in Rotterdam, where at least 7 people were injured. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been sacked as Manchester United manager. It's after the team suffered a 4-1 loss to Watford yesterday. It's the 5th league defeat in 7 matches for the team. Coach Michael Carrick will take charge while the club looks for an interim manager for the rest of the season. The Foreign Office says China must provide verifiable evidence that tennis player Peng Shuai is safe and well. The latest video posted by Chinese state media appears to show her at a tennis tournament in Beijing. She disappeared after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official 3 weeks ago. Over 40s will be able to book their COVID booster jab from tomorrow in England. NHS England says around 500,000 people in the age bracket are eligible for the 3rd dose. And a UK first for Portsmouth, which has introduced a zebra crossing that lights up as people approach. LED panels are triggered by sensors, making it more visible to drivers and safer for pedestrians. If the lighting system proves successful, the concept could be replicated across other parts of the city. You're up to date. I'll be back with more on today's main stories at the top of the hour. Now let's take a look at the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking dry with sunny spells for many, those scattered showers for coastal areas. Plenty of sunny spells across the southwest of England this afternoon. Dry in the east, those scattered showers will continue pushing into the west, feeling cold, particularly in the wind. Across the southeast of England, and a mixture of sunny spells and showers, feeling colder than recent days with temperatures reaching 8 Celsius in London. Coastal showers will continue in Wales, though elsewhere it will be a generally dry day with sunny spells, a chilly day with blustery winds. A widely dry day across northwest England, though there may be a few showers in the far east. Plenty of sunny spells, but feeling chilly elsewhere, especially in the blustery winds along the coast. Scattered blustery showers will continue to affect northeastern England this afternoon, mostly dry away from coasts with plenty of sunny spells there too. For Scotland, it will be a bright and mostly dry afternoon with sunny spells. Some blustery showers will continue across northern and eastern coasts, feeling noticeably colder than of late. A mainly dry afternoon across Northern Ireland with plenty of sunny intervals. The odd shower will continue across northern coasts, feeling chilly with temperatures reaching around 8 Celsius in Belfast. Showers easing into this evening, though with plenty of clear skies around, it will be a cold night.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends on GB News. Now, I had a real treat yesterday being able to talk to the guy who runs one of my favourite charities, the Brook charity for working horses and donkeys, because I happen to have noticed, as many of you did as well, that Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall, who'd been in Jordan, had then moved on to Egypt, had spent time in Cairo at the very animal hospital where the Brook started. So I just said to the bosses out there, I'm involved in this a little bit, so could we possibly do it? And we did. Well, lo and behold, my Twitter feed this morning included some wonderful pictures of Camilla again, now back safely home in Ascot. And she met some friends of mine from the Ebony Horse Club, which is another charity that's very, very close to my heart. This weekend they had that special visitor when they went to the races. Now, they do terrific work to raise the aspirations of those young people, their life skills, their education, and their well-being. And they're the young people of Brixton. And you will notice that they're from all sorts of racial backgrounds, ethnic diversity, and there in the headscarf is Muslim Khadija, and she was the first, you remember of Ebony, and she won the Magnolia Cup at no less a racetrack than Goodwood. And Camilla, with the wonderful hat there, is our president and does terrific stuff. So I got on my text and said, can we talk to somebody? And I'm thrilled to bits to say Naomi Howgate, who is the general manager down at the Ebony, there she is, said, yeah, I'll come on and chat about it. You're just back from out hacking in Brixton, aren't you?
Yeah, literally, as I came through the gates of the yard with 5 young people on horses, we'd been out on the streets as part of our lessons this morning, and that's when I got a call from your team. So sorry, I haven't had a chance for hair and makeup.
Naomi, don't give that a moment's thought. Take our viewers back a little bit, because I know the story. We've talked about it so many, many times. But the Ebony Horse Club is there in Brixton, right in the middle of a very ethnically diverse community. But it does show jumping, it does dressage, it does all those middle-class things, as people dismiss it as. Remind me and folk listening what the connection is, why it started and how it started.
The club itself was started actually over 25 years ago by a local resident who was into horses herself and saw that the young people in the community needed kind of new opportunities and a kind of chance to raise their ambitions. And she took them herself for her riding lessons, gave them youth work support, and started taking them on trips out of their local area. And it all snowballed from there. The centre itself, so we've got a purpose-built yard, stables and arena, was opened 10 years ago in October 2011. So it's just our 10th anniversary this year, which is fantastic.
It's absolutely brilliant. And you end up as well with one of the finest charity presidents in the world, Camilla, Duchess of Cornwall. You and I have had tea at Clarence House out in the garden with some of the members, and Camilla insisted some of the horses as well. So what was it like meeting up with her at Ascot?
It was fantastic to see her yesterday at Ascot. As you mentioned, she's very active and just really great president of ours who takes time to meet our young people. Hi, Godwin. Takes time to meet our young people and represents our club to the highest level. And she has invited us to some fantastic things in the past, and she's been to see us here at Ebony. And to be at Ascot with her and lots of other supporters yesterday was just fantastic. After 18 months of not being able to get out and about and do very much, and the press that we've received and her kind words that she's said on TV and to the young people themselves just mean a huge amount for us.
Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Now, I mentioned in the introduction as well, because we had a clip of Khadija, who is, I think, one of the most impressive young women I've ever had the honour to meet. And she and my mate Ollie Bell from ITV helped make a documentary about her winning the Magnolia Cup at Goodwood. She's now reading engineering at Sussex University. So this isn't simply something that throws a sort of kiss and cuddle arm around people, say, oh, let's help the little ones along. This is really cutting-edge, skill-developing work with horses that gets these kids off the ground and into an even better life.
Yeah, exactly. And we've got a fantastic youth work team here, and even our riding coaches have youth work training, and we're always looking out for how we can support our young people. And that may well be in the saddle and encouraging them with their riding, but as you said, it might be helping them into college, into further education. We've supported young people to go on to study to be paramedics. We've got a young man who's just got a job at City Hall, and that was off a kind of direct connection with a project that we did there. And it's just amazing to see them kind of really thriving. And they're so creative, they're so energetic, they've got all the skill and talent of everybody else in the world. They just need a little bit of kind of support in terms of connection and getting them there, and that's simply just because of the area that they've grown up in. So we're really proud to see them go on and shine.
Final point is that the equestrian fraternity, it's a lovely bunch of people, but when it comes to things like British racing and the Queen's Own trainer, they are very serious in who they back and who they don't back. The people that are engaged with you at that level is truly phenomenal and the most extraordinary tribute to the quality of the work that you do with these young people.
Yeah, thank you for that. And a huge thank you to you, Alastair, because you've supported us for so many years. And we're a tiny organisation with there's 7 of us that work here. We don't have a marketing team. As I've just said, I've literally been teaching this morning, and now I've come in to kind of do this press interview. So any profile that we get and any support we get from the industry and anybody who's slightly more high profile than us is really, really just incredible for us, and we're extremely grateful for it. And tomorrow I'll be on the yard, and then I'll be writing fundraising bids. So whilst we may look like this kind of lovely shiny charity who gets to kind of mix with royalty at Ascot, there's a lot of hard work that goes on the ground to kind of get the kids in the gates and keep supporting them.
I'll vouch for that. Great to see you, Naomi, and thanks for taking the messages and suddenly thinking, I've got to rejig my Sunday afternoon. I will see you very, very soon. You take care, and thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That's a chum of mine. I'm very honest about these things. I wouldn't try and sneak something in, but that really is a terrific charity. I'm not asking you for money, but I am asking you to just have a little look on the website at Ebony Horse Club and just see what they really do. And I think and hope that you'll be very impressed. Now, teenagers at a school in Sutton in Ashfield have been treated to a special cookery class this week, led by not one, but 4 Conservative politicians. Ashfield's MP Lee Anderson has been working with the local academy in teaching kids how to cook and eat healthily on a budget. He roped in some of his closest party colleagues who joined him from across the country. There's a serious edge to it. Living costs continue to rise. Ashfield's MP says that learning to cook properly can actually help families, particularly in poorer communities. But I guess it can help all of us. Our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis has more.
It's back to school for these MPs. They're at the Community Academy in Sutton in Ashfield in Nottinghamshire with a class of hungry mouths to feed. With a £50 budget, they need to feed a family of 5 for a whole week.
All of this that you can see was only £50, and we think we're going to feed people for 7 days, whereas actually for £50 you'd probably buy about, a day and a half worth of ready-made meals, and that's it. In plastic packaging, with salt and all sorts of other preservatives added. This is great. This is how it used to be done. We need to go back to those times.
I'm a bit lazy as well with my cooking. I eat out too much, put on a stone or 2 in Parliament. I'm going to try and learn to actually cook things for myself a bit more, and gives me some practice too.
Ashfield's Conservative MP, Lee Anderson, has been working with the school trying to tackle the community's food problem. Many families in Sutton are struggling. 1 in 5 need universal credit. With the cost of living rising, Lee says education about what to buy and how to use it is key.
Food poverty is something that's close to my heart. We've seen a big increase in the use of food banks over the years, and I've been trying to work locally with food banks to try and find out how we can help people feed themselves better. And the one thing I kept hearing time and time again is a lot of the service users that come into food banks didn't actually know what to do with the ingredients. So they were taking the tin stuff and the packaged stuff, but the fresh ingredients, like we see here today, they didn't know how to cook, they didn't know how to budget properly, and buy a decent shop on a budget and make those nutritious meals that they need at home.
The food bank here has seen a huge spike in people needing help since the pandemic began. But in Sutton, like many towns, takeaways are tempting, and the teachers here say skills like cookery are disappearing.
The reason why people don't eat healthy, they haven't got the facilities at home either. Some of them haven't only got a microwave to cook with, or they haven't got somewhere to cook things, and I think that's one of the things where they struggle. And I think they're just stuck in a rut, basically. They don't want to, some of them don't want to learn, or they think it's too difficult, and it's breaking that barrier with them. It is easy. I think they think they're going to be cooking all day long, but as you've seen from today's cooking of today, you're talking half an hour, 40 minutes.
So, teaching a new generation those skills is part of the school's strategy.
It's good to have a healthy diet. It's probably with the price, maybe that you're not overspending, because you never know, you might not actually eat that food within the week, so you might overbuy.
If, for instance, your parents would want help in the kitchen, if they're working on their own in the kitchen, you could help them, and then you can use these skills when you're older at the same time.
It's a good way to learn different life skills, but in a way, it's going to take you a while, and at the end of the day, it will always take you a while, but at the end of the day, you'll get something that was worth it.
After a quick taste test, the result is tallied. The MPs have managed to make up 140 meals. Will Hollis reporting from Sutton in Ashfield in the East Midlands.
You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends. We've lots more coming up on the programme this afternoon. It is my favourite time of the weekend. We will be discussing all things Formula One next. But first, let's give a look to the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. You are watching Alastair Stewart and Friends on GB News, and thank you very much indeed for so doing. To Formula One now, and the first ever Qatar Grand Prix, which is taking place this afternoon. The circuit is just outside Doha. Lewis Hamilton, I am delighted to say, will start on pole position, not actually something he's done a lot this season, after a fantastic drive in qualifying yesterday. The British star will, more importantly, be trying to keep both Max Verstappen and his Mercedes teammate Valtteri Bottas at bay, with only 3 hotly contested races to go before the end of the season. So let's get more on all of the action with PA's Sport F1 correspondent, my old chum, Philip Duncan. Philip, always a pleasure to see you. There you are. Amazing Hamilton performance in qualification. Something he's not always done this season, and P1 doesn't automatically mean winning.
No, you're right. It doesn't mean winning, but he's also been handed some very, very good news in the last few minutes, Alastair. His main rival, Max Verstappen's been given a 5-place grid penalty for overtaking under yellow flags yesterday in qualifying. So he will start 7th today as opposed to 2nd. So an even better news for Hamilton. As you say, always, a pole doesn't necessarily guarantee a win, but that's fantastic news for him, really, in the championship fight. So, yeah, a bit of breaking news there. Bottas, his teammates, also been penalised, chucked back a couple of places, also for overtaking under yellow flags. So it's Pierre Gasly that actually joins Hamilton on the front row today. So it's looking good for Hamilton in Doha.
As you say, breaking news I didn't know, and I'm trying to cover the fact that I'm literally grinning from ear to ear. And of course, in what is being judged by many as Lewis's best ever drive in Brazil last weekend, he was heavily penalised, back for the sprint start, back in not quite the middle of the field, but low down, and went on to win it. Let's be clear, you and I are both Hamilton supporters, but Verstappen is no amateur.
No, absolutely. He's definitely no amateur. But let's see. It's not going to be easy for him to come back through the field. As you said at the top of the show, it's the first race in Qatar, so we don't really know how it's going to run in terms of whether there'll be a lot of overtaking or whether there won't be. But the prediction is it's going to be quite hard to follow here, which means it's hard to overtake, which should mean it'll be difficult for Verstappen to make it back through the pack, which again is good news for Hamilton, who's 14 points ahead of 14 points behind Verstappen going into today's race with just 2 to go after the conclusion of today's race. So, yeah, it'd be great to see Verstappen coming back through the pack. If he gets anywhere near the drive that Hamilton managed to put in last week when he came in from 10th on the grid to win that race, which was probably his, one of his finest drives. I'm sure you'll agree. So, yeah, it's all again set up for a great race, but advantage Hamilton in this championship that keeps going from one way to the other.
Agree with all of that. Final quick one, if I may. Qatar is red rag to a bull for many on human rights issues, and something that's very dear to Hamilton's heart. OK, he's wearing a rainbow helmet. Does it slightly surprise you that he hasn't been more outspoken on Qatar's problems, particularly as it's today 1 year to the start of the World Cup?
I mean, at the beginning of the week, he was obviously asked about it, Alastair, and he said, that Formula One needs to address, the situation. The sport can't keep going to countries with questionable human rights records. I mean, we're in Saudi Arabia next week, so he wants to see the problem addressed, but he can't do it alone. He can't be the only driver that speaks out about it. Obviously, as you said as well, he's wearing his rainbow helmet, the Racing Pride helmet, which will be, another a point that he's making, about the human rights record where we're in Qatar. So, yeah, we'll see. But I think he's doing his bit, or he's doing as much as he thinks he can at the moment, and I'm probably relying on the sport to be able to do more, I guess.
All right, Philip, always a pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for breaking into what's always a busy day for you. Good to see you, and enjoy the race. It is exactly 1 o'clock, and you're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News, and we've plenty more after this. Hello and welcome back if you've been with us since midday, or hello and welcome if you've just joined us. I'm Alastair Stewart, and for the next 2 hours I'll be keeping you company with the stories that really matter across the country. We've plenty coming up. We'll be continuing our conversation on social care. Who pays for it? And will the government's plans for reform actually work? But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the news. Here's Simon Pusey.
Yes, thank you very much, Alastair. I'm Simon Pusey, and this is your news at 1 o'clock. There's been a second night of violence in the Netherlands, with dozens of people being arrested in The Hague. Protesters set fires on the street and threw fireworks at police as they demonstrated against tough new COVID measures. It comes a day after riots in Rotterdam, where at least 7 people were injured. Thousands of people have also been demonstrating across other European countries, including Austria, Italy and Croatia.
So, for example, look at Austria. Austria going down the lines of mandatory vaccination. They would justify any challenge in the ECHR on the grounds of proportionality, and health and national security are pretty much universally permitted by the Human Rights Court to justify interventions.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been sacked as Manchester United manager. That's after the club held an emergency board meeting following the team's 4-1 loss to Watford yesterday. United have suffered 5 league defeats in just 7 matches. Coach Michael Carrick will take charge while the club looks for an interim manager for the rest of the season. The Foreign Office says China must provide verifiable evidence that tennis player Peng Shuai is safe and well. The latest video posted by Chinese state media appears to show her at a tennis tournament in Beijing. Fellow players, the UN and the White House have all voiced their concern for the welfare of the Wimbledon doubles champion. She disappeared after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official 3 weeks ago. Conservative MP Tim Lawton told GB News that China needs to be held account.
They just do not tolerate any criticism. And that's why many of us have called for, and again, Parliament voted for, a diplomatic boycott of the forthcoming Beijing Olympics, which incredibly the International Olympic Committee awarded to Beijing, despite all the publicity about the human rights abuses, despite what's going on with genocide and everything else. It's just inconceivable that we should be sending VIPs to this propaganda exercise in Beijing next February.
More migrants, including young children, have crossed the channel in the past 24 hours. Official figures haven't been confirmed, but it's believed hundreds made the journey. More than 24,700 people have arrived in the UK so far this year alone, almost 3 times more than in 2020. Former Chief Immigration Officer Kevin Sanders told GB News solutions are needed or the situation will only get worse.
I feel that probably we need to come up with the offshore processing centres. That will send a message to the migrants. It will certainly stop them coming across the channel because they won't want to be flown off to Albania or somewhere else. 25,000 crossings this year. And if we don't do something, it'll be 100,000 next year.
The UK's Brexit minister says the country will need to safeguard its position in other ways if it's not able to reach an agreement with the EU over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Lord Frost says there's momentum for the government to secure a solution based on consensus following a meeting in Brussels with the European Commission Vice President. It comes hours after protesters gathered at the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, demanding post-Brexit arrangements to be protected. Author and political commentator Kevin Marr told GB News the UK is still weighing up the EU's proposals.
Nub of it is, can that process be smooth? Now, the European Union is saying, look, we're prepared to reduce paperwork checks by 50% and checks on goods coming in by 80%. And that should ensure that there is much more smooth trading between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The question really for Lord Frost, the government's Brexit negotiator and the minister leading negotiations with the European Union and his counterpart, Maros Sefcovic, is that broadly enough?
Over 40s will be able to book their COVID booster jab from tomorrow in England. NHS England says around 500,000 people in the age bracket are eligible for the third dose. The government is encouraging people to take the jab to prevent another wave of cases. A leaked report also suggests vaccines could be given to children under the age of 12 from next year. And UK first in Portsmouth, where a zebra crossing has been introduced that lights up as people approach. LED panels are triggered by sensors, making it more visible to drivers and safer for pedestrians. If the lighting system proves successful, the concept could be replicated across other parts of the city. And that's just about it from me for now. I'll be bringing you more headlines in around half an hour's time. Now let's get back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Simon, thank you very much indeed. You are watching Alastair Stewart and Friends, and I am here until 3 o'clock, keeping you company along with friends and friendly guests. Still to come, in around an hour, you'll be hearing my take on our main discussion today, the care system. Most of us will end up needing it, but who pays for it and how do we decide? Governments come up with new plans to reform the system, but have we been sold a pup? Plus, we'll be looking at the importance of investment in British farming as part of our rural spotlight. And apparently veggie patches, even allotments, are among the must-haves for young homeowners. So, what's drawing young people to gardening? And what are the benefits? As always, GB News is all about you, our viewers. Any burning questions or stories that you think we need to cover, no matter how big or small they may appear, we genuinely want to hear them. Get your voice heard by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk. And do please put Alastair Stewart in the subject line. Now, the issue of social care has long been a hot-button political issue. Government after government has promised to tackle it, but none have really succeeded. Along comes Boris Johnson taking a shot at it with new plans for reforms to the care system. But ministers dropped a bit of a bombshell this week, revealing plans to water down a new cap on social care costs. Earlier today, the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, defended the government's proposals on social care reform.
What we've set out is what we said we would do. So we are protecting people from the catastrophic costs of care, which means that if they know that their costs cannot be higher than £86,000, they can plan for the future, and that means planning around their financial assets. We've also said that no one will have to sell their home during their lifetime because of deferred payment agreements and things. So what we've said we would introduce is exactly what we're going ahead. It's a much fairer, much more generous care system. So the means testing, for example, under the current system, if you only get help from the state if you have assets below £24,500. Now we're raising that threshold to £100,000, so everyone will be better off.
So, do you believe the Health Secretary, or do you believe my earlier guests from Age UK and, more importantly, from the House of Lords, Ros Altman. They tended to agree with me that we are, in fact, being sold a pup. I'm joined now by the former Conservative Health Secretary and former Chair of the Health Select Committee and Chair of the NHS Confederation. Goodness me, Stephen, you've been around a lot in the jobs that really, really matter. It's great to see you, Stephen Dorrell. Sajiv has we've just run a clip from him on another programme saying these proposals will protect people from catastrophic costs. No one will have to sell their homes. It is a fairer and more generous system. There's a good chunk of the Conservative Parliamentary Party who thinks that's just nonsense, and I don't disagree with them.
And I tend to agree with you, Alastair, not for the first time in both of our lives. But I think first of all, let's be fair to the government. It is true that the proposal that came out last week is better than the current arrangements. That, I think, is true. The problem from the government's perspective is that it's not the same proposal as they put on the table 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it isn't anywhere near good enough, I think, to match the aspirations of those in particular in what's called the red wall seats, to have their assets protected. What the government is proposing is a structure which works better in the south than it does in the north, and still is simply the latest draft of a proposal that, frankly, the government should have thought through before it started announcing it. This is the third version of this policy in not much more than a month.
Sure. And I added earlier on when I was talking to our mutual friend Ros Altman about this, that not only do I think that it is inept in terms of it being an active care policy, but brutally, it's politically inept because, Sajiv is wrong. People will have to sell their homes. And the ones who, as of this vote, are more likely to have to sell their homes are those who live in poorer areas behind the red wall. I mean, it is just politically inane.
And what I don't understand is why the government doesn't pick up the idea that Damien Green has been talking about, which is that this shouldn't be a fixed number of £86,000, regardless of whether you live in the plush south or there are relatively well-off areas in the north. We shouldn't see this in simple terms, but whether you live in a plush area or in a less well-off area, whether your household income is relatively high or relatively low, the £86,000 cap is the same for everybody. What Damien has been suggesting is that actually should be related to the scale of your housing asset, so that if you live in an area where average house prices are, say, £150,000, there should be a proportion of that protected, which is the same proportion as would prevail in areas where house prices can be 2, 3 or 4 times that level.
Yeah, absolutely. And Damien is widely quoted in the papers today, and well worth people Googling that and having a quick look at it, because it is a very powerful and not stupidly partisan point. It's just a very helpful contribution. The other thing, Stephen, that we've talked about this morning is something that really worries me profoundly, and that is that many people out there simply don't realise that the cost of accommodation, what's called the hotel costs, are not included in any of this. And I know through my poor papa, who spent his last couple of years in a care home, they're very high, and I can understand that why. But you certainly, if you have to face that for a wee while, you are going to have to sell your home if you're lucky enough to have one, because these measures that we're discussing only cover healthcare and looking after you, whether it's in home or care. But the actual cost of putting somebody into a care home, because that's the only answer for them, is high and not covered.
And this, of course, emphasises the fact that all of these different proposals are very complex. What the Prime Minister promised, if you remember, on the steps of number 10 Downing Street, now more than 2 years ago, was that he had an answer to the social care crisis. Now, we all know the pandemic has intervened, so time has moved on. But it doesn't alter the fact, in fact, the pandemic has emphasised the importance of thinking of the health and care system as a single system, and thinking about the join between those who rely on social care in order to protect their health and well-being, and the National Health Service that too often finds itself picking up the pieces when social care is unable to cope. And proper funding of social care is not only a matter of justice for those who rely on it, it's also a matter which it's fundamental, actually, to the delivery of sustainable, high-quality healthcare.
Yeah. Final one, and it's broader than just care, but I know that you've given it great thought over the years. You and I both agree that the state cannot, and politically shouldn't, be expected to pay for everything in terms of the welfare state. Do you think now that care has reminded folk that it might be about time that we had a profound and pretty fundamental rethink of what the state does and what individuals, through their own responsibility, should do?
I do think that, but I think it's important in saying that to enter a major qualification, because too often, Alastair, that is code for saying that what we want to do is introduce charges for core NHS services. I am not in favour of charging for the core functions of the National Health Service. The free offer of the National Health Service seems to me it's important to safeguard that in order then to have precisely the kind of discussion that you are advocating about the broader range of care and public services, which actually the quality of people's housing, the range of services that are delivered by local authorities are often are at least as influential in terms of determining healthy outcomes as what's done in a doctor's surgery or in a hospital. So thinking of all of those as a single range of services delivering healthy outcomes for citizens, I'm very strongly in favour of that. Indeed, until we start to think about it in that way, I think we shall continue to end up, we'll continue to be in the world that we're in, which is that the accidents that fall through the system unnecessarily, it shouldn't happen. They end up in the National Health Service suffering from health conditions they didn't need to suffer from, creating avoidable demand on the NHS.
Stephen Dorrell, always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. That's Stephen Dorrell, former Conservative Health Secretary, former Chair of the Health Select Committee and Chair of the NHS Federation. Folk will have to sell their homes and the poor will suffer most. But I'm not, says Mr Dorrell, in favour of charges for core NHS services, but what I am in favour of is a profound and fundamental rethink of what we try to do. I'm delighted to be joined now by another friend of mine, Marianne Wanstall, who is the Chief Executive Officer at the Brendan Care Foundation. It's a registered charity dedicated to improving the quality of life for older people through care homes across the south of England, and also for clubs which look after folk who aren't necessarily full-time care, or those who go into one of the homes for respite care. Why do I know so much of it? Well, I'm a patron of it and very proud so to be. So that's another card put on the table. Really lovely to see you this Sunday afternoon, and thanks for joining us. Let me start at the very beginning. What's your take from the front end, the receiving, providing end, as it were, on the cap-in principle? Do you think it will work?
Thanks, Alastair. It's lovely to be here as well. Thanks so much for having me. I think this is, as has been previously indicated, as Stephen was just saying, it's a complicated area, clearly. There are benefits to making sure that people have their assets taken into consideration when it comes to funding. But we would certainly agree, based on what we know so far, that the cap process and what's being introduced in terms of the means testing approach will impact those with less assets more than it will impact those who have more assets at their disposal. And I think in particular this piece around what's not covered, so anything that excludes care. And there's a lot of grey areas in this because we have staff who support our homes but who may not directly be providing care but are still involved in that delivery. And it's understanding how much of those costs can also be included. So it's a complicated area for us.
Yeah, understand that. Let's cut also to the chase on what I've been talking to folk throughout the morning, starting off with the lovely Ros Altman. As people contemplate their own futures or the futures of their mums and dads or grandparents, I think an awful lot of people work under the assumption that not only healthcare may be covered to a degree, but that accommodation will be. It will not. And as you know better than anybody else, it's one of the highest label cost items in the whole package.
Absolutely, and it's really important to understand that. So anything that is a living cost, so that's the accommodation, the food, the housekeeping costs, the laundry, the general maintenance costs, all of that, none of that is included in this cap. That still has to be funded by individuals and therefore go through that process. Now, it's clear that increasing the level at which support can be assessed is going to help some people in some cases, but it is a minefield and people really do need to try and understand better and earlier and have those conversations earlier. And I think also, people need to be given more options. There need to be more alternatives for people. On one of our sites, as well as a care home, we provide accommodation that people can rent where one of the family may have a diagnosis of dementia. That allows people to trial living in supported living in a way that doesn't necessarily involve them immediately making huge decisions like selling their house. I think there have to be broader considerations like this and opportunities provided that just give people more options and a better understanding of what they may be able to do.
Yeah, you have two enormous strengths. One is that you do keep a very close eye on costs and try and keep it as reasonable as possible because it is tight times for everybody out there. And secondly, you are very open and candid about what you offer and what you don't. Do you see, and do the team at Brendan Care see jaws drop very often when someone comes in and says mum or dad or grandpa or grandma are likely to need to come and share space with you and the team, and you explain quite openly and clearly what it's going to cost? Do those jaws drop and hit the ground?
That can happen. It can happen. I mean, those conversations are tricky. It's frustrating that early up, one of the conversations we have to have is essentially a financial assessment that is where we sit down with the family and go, this is what it looks like. This is the impact on you. And obviously what we then try and do is make sure that, they're clear on what they are able to get in the way of government funding or not, and therefore understand where that leaves them. I mean, we work hard on this. We have a commitment that is if somebody's funding runs out after they've been with us for a while, we're not going to ask them to move. That's part of our charitable objectives that will continue supporting people. But it can be a very complicated and difficult conversation to have with people. And obviously, yes, we work with people to help them understand that as soon as possible.
Yeah, and that's, if I may say so, a very generous offer and part of the deal, which I remember discussing with you when I first, well, not you, but your predecessor when I first got involved in the charity. A final question, it is a slight change of tack, but you will have expected it, I know. There's been big row about the vaccine mandate, and it's coming in for the NHS in April, but it's there right now for people who work in the care sector. Has it proved difficult for you? Have your team been willing to take it on board, or for some, whatever the reasons may be, has it become a big issue?
For a few, it has become a big issue, and that's understandable. We're entirely in favour of vaccination as one of the number of tools at our disposal to manage and mitigate against the risk of COVID, obviously. And it has had some impact. We've seen a small number of our team leave us in the last couple of weeks when this came into law. We have a few more who are currently exempt under the self-certification process, pending assessment as to whether they qualify as exempt under the legislation. It does have that impact. I think the biggest issue for us is that this comes at a time when actually colleagues are very tired, very worn down, very weary, and actually recruiting new colleagues is hard, as is in lots of sectors, but particularly in social care and healthcare at the moment. So the combination and the timing has been the real challenge for us. And our teams have been wonderful at engaging in this, talking to us about it, articulating their concerns so that we can have that conversation and try to reassure them. And I think that's been a really positive step. We just could have done with more time and more scope for this at what's been otherwise a very challenging time.
Yeah. And I do hope the government were listening to that last bit, because maybe a little bit more time and listening to people's concerns, never a bad thing, particularly when you're trying to plan something like care. Marianne, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed for finding time for us this afternoon. That's Marianne Wanstall, who's the Chief Executive Officer at the Brendan Care Foundation. Brilliant organisation in the care sector, which, as I said, to be totally honest with you, I am, as it happens, a patron of. Now, as usual, we'll be sharing your thoughts on this issue of care just after 2 o'clock. But this discussion's prompted so many of you to get in touch already that I asked the team if I could share some of your feedback now as well, in case we ran out of time a bit later on. And I've got some printed out here. Steve has said, my only income is my state pension. I didn't plan it that way. Many of my generation never had a job that paid enough to accommodate a private pension. I've worked all my life from the age of 15 in factories, but it was all that I could do to get through the week and stay out of debt. Dave has sent us an email. I can remember that when Margaret Thatcher introduced the right to buy scheme, one of the benefits of the scheme was that the ex-council property could be sold to pay for care in later life. That was beneficial to council tenants who had been able to buy their property at a very attractive price, unlike those in the private sector who will be the biggest losers when it comes to care costs. Intriguing thought, Dave. Thanks for sharing that. Rob's also been in touch and says, for state pension purposes, I have 47 out of 49 qualifying years. So, should I need any care in later life, I consider my account to be well and truly in credit, and all costs have been paid for up front. It's not the business of the individual, nor the local authority, nor the private sector to provide care. This is the sole responsibility of the NHS. It ain't, Rob, I'm sorry, but that may be what you'd like to see, but that simply isn't the case. Ian dropped us an email. National insurance should be paid in our retirement to fund our care in old age. This would be fairer than robbing the poor at the end of their lives. That point is crucial because it plays to everything that Marianne said and Ros said and Stephen Dorrell said. What we really need is clarity on what we're going to have to pay for and how we're going to have to fund it, whether it's through national insurance or through the sale of our assets or some other scheme. My real worry about this pup is the muddle, so thanks for underlining that. I've got time, I've just been told, for one more, and that comes from Kathy, who says, why is it that people who've worked all their lives, worked to buy their homes, have to pay for social care, when people who have never worked a day in their lives get it all for free? That's a much trickier one, but it's an important point to pay, because I think it also plays to the final conversation that I had with Stephen Dorrell, and that is the weaknesses we've trawled over this morning and this afternoon are profound, but maybe we need to take one step back from all of that. As Kathy says, when people who've worked a day in their lives get it all for free and those who've worked all their lives get nothing, something's wrong. It may not be a pup, but it ain't perfect. Plenty more to come this afternoon on Alastair Stewart and Friends. After the break, we'll be chatting about the importance of rewilding. See you in a couple of minutes.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking dry with sunny spells for many, those scattered showers for coastal areas. Plenty of sunny spells across the southwest of England this afternoon. Dry in the east, those scattered showers will continue pushing into the west, feeling cold, particularly in the wind. Across the southeast of England, and a mixture of sunny spells and showers, feeling colder than recent days with temperatures reaching 8 Celsius in London. Coastal showers will continue in Wales, though elsewhere it will be a generally dry day with sunny spells, a chilly day with blustery winds. A widely dry day across northwest England, though there may be a few showers in the far east. Plenty of sunny spells, but feeling chilly elsewhere, especially in the blustery winds along the coast. Scattered blustery showers will continue to affect northeastern England this afternoon, mostly dry away from coasts with plenty of sunny spells there too. For Scotland, it will be a bright and mostly dry afternoon with sunny spells. Some blustery showers will continue across northern and eastern coasts, feeling noticeably colder than of late. A mainly dry afternoon across Northern Ireland with plenty of sunny intervals. The odd shower will continue across northern coasts, feeling chilly with temperatures reaching around 8 Celsius in Belfast. Showers easing into this evening, though with plenty of clear skies around, it will be a cold night.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. It's just coming up to 1:30 and you're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends on GB News. Now, a story caught our eye today about a hunter who was nearly killed by a bear in the Pyrenees in France. The European brown bear has nearly disappeared in this part of the world, so France began a programme to reintroduce the species, importing them from Slovenia. It got us thinking about which species should be reintroduced into the UK as part of rewilding. Zach Goldsmith has mentioned wolves, for example, and that we should learn to live with them once again. So there are two barrels to this story, and I'm delighted joining me to talk about the importance of rewilding is wildlife protection and animal welfare campaigner Dominic Dyer. Dominic, good to you. Good to see you. I want to come to the tricky bit in a moment, but first of all, let's talk generally about what rewilding can mean in terms of species, because we've lost some, but they've not disappeared altogether. And I'm a huge fan of rewilding when it comes to plants, but on animals, it seems even more attractive.
Yeah, well, you know, we are a green and present land in many ways, Alastair, when you look at us and you travel around the country, but we're actually one of the most nature depleted countries on earth in relation to Britain. So, you know, if you look since my lifetime, since 1970, we've had over a 60% decline in many of the major species that we find in the British Isles. And so, you know, this is down to human development, industrial agriculture, to a degree to our changing climate as well. So we need to try and reset the clock effectively and restore some ecological balance to our countryside and our landscapes. And this is very much what rewilding is about. It's about looking at how we can take a piece of land that's maybe sort of declined in biodiversity because of industrial development, human activity, farming, and actually restore it to a more natural state in terms of woodlands, plants, and other wildlife coming back. And it can be very, very effective. And I think it's also a very effective way of restoring carbon capture to parts of the countryside that's become so important in relation to the climate change debate as well.
Absolutely agree with all of that. And I mentioned in the introduction to our conversation Zach Goldsmith, who is singing the praises of wolves. And you've also got a keen personal interest in another glorious creature, the lynx.
Yes, you know, the European lynx is one of the most successful reintroduction projects in Europe, you know, the Iberian lynx in Spain and Portugal. And, you know, there's been a lot of work done to reintroduce lynx here into Britain that we've not had in our landscapes for many hundreds of years. So at the moment, we have a project underway to reintroduce these animals to highland areas of Scotland that are quite remote, and also to consider doing so in parts of East Anglia as well. But I think this could be a very successful project. These creatures are beautiful. They restore some ecological balance in our countryside because could predate on deer, for example, and other species like badgers that have no natural predators now. And also, I think they could bring, about ecological tourism to certain parts of the country. They can be viewed from hides. They don't pose any significant threat to humans. They're very shy animals. They'll stay behind the wood line. They might take the odd sheep or lamb, but, that can be dealt with in terms of any conflict with farmers. So I think we can reintroduce lynx. I'm not certain we could safely reintroduce wolf or bears to the United Kingdom, though. I'm not convinced of that argument.
No, fascinating, because that takes us to the tricky bit, and I know you care passionately about it. And that is, I'm in favour of, I can see wolves fine, I mean, I can see lynx, and even if they do stay behind the log shed, as you put it. If we're going to do this, then us humans need a profound bit of re-education as well, because as that French example showed, somebody shooting a mother bear with her cubs is an act of ignorance. It should simply be wrong. So if we're going to do this, which I'm all in favour of, we've also got to educate the public what you can and cannot do out in the countryside.
Exactly. And if you look at Europe as a whole, the reintroduction of apex predators in Europe has been a huge success since the 1990s. You could look at Iberian lynx in Spain or Portugal. You look at wolves now, you find them in Belgium, in Holland, in Luxembourg, in Germany, in countries that you just didn't find them before, and increasing in populations. The bears, as you said, were brought in from Slovenia to the Pyrenees because, the numbers have been decimated by human activity prior to the 1990s. I think there's about 60 breeding pairs there. There is significant protection for those animals. I think it's €170,000 fine, maybe 3 years in prison if you illegally shoot one. The trouble is that they do at times come into conflict with humans. This was a bear probably protecting its cubs. This was a shooter out killing wild boar. In my view, the animal should not have been shot. I know there's a lot of anger and there'll have to be investigations doing that. But, the French authorities over the years have put millions of euros into cohabitation programs to help farmers, to compensate them if they lose lambs, for example, to the bears or to wolves. And I think they're trying to ensure that we can educate people to live side by side with wildlife. And you're absolutely right, Alastair. I think, it was a shame to me that I think farmers in East Anglia, for example, have opposed the reintroduction of sea eagles, white-tailed eagles, to that part of the world, because you can find them now on the Isle of Wight. They're incredible to see, and in Scotland. But they were very concerned that they would take their lambs. I think they were overplaying that fear, to be quite frank. I think it's wonderful to see these birds back. We've brought back beavers, and they are beginning to really sort of, come an integral part of our countryside, and to prevent flooding and to bring some real benefits to our landscapes, for example. But again, we still see farmers in Scotland wanting to kill these animals. There are licenses granted to people to shoot them. So even when we're reintroducing them, they're still under threat as well. I think we've got, too disconnected from nature. I think we've got to learn to live with nature. The one thing that we found during the pandemic is that we started to go out into the countryside again, Alastair. We'd had time to look at the seasons and the biodiversity and wildlife. Even where I live here in Milton Keynes, I've got red kites, I've got buzzards, we've got badgers, we've got deer, amazing green corridors with wildlife right into our towns and cities. And we should welcome that, and we should try and live in balance with it. I think that's terribly
sitting alongside concrete cows, so there is balance in all things, even in Milton Keynes.
There are indeed.
Dominic,
there are indeed.
Thanks for those profound thoughts, and thanks for a balanced conversation about what for many is a tricky conversation. So let's rewild, but let's also be sensible and well-informed about it. That's Dominic Dyer there, Wildlife Protection and Animal Welfare Campaign. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends. Plenty more still to come this afternoon, including we'll be taking a look at the Farming Investment Fund as part of our Rural Spotlight. But first, let's bring you right up to date with all of the latest news. Here's Simon.
Thank you, Alastair. I'm Simon Pusey. Here are your latest headlines. The taxi driver who survived the Liverpool terror attack says it's a miracle that he's alive. In a statement, David Perry described the bombing as an evil act and said he's thankful no one else was injured. He and his wife, Rachel, also thanked the public for their amazing generosity after the Remembrance Sunday blast. There's been a second night of violence in the Netherlands, with dozens of people being arrested in The Hague. Protesters set fires in the streets and threw fireworks at police as they demonstrated against tough new COVID measures. It comes a day after riots in Rotterdam, where at least 7 people were injured. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been sacked as Manchester United manager. That's after the team suffered a 4-1 loss to Watford yesterday. It's his 5th league defeat in 7 matches. Coach Michael Carrick will now take charge while the club looks for an interim manager for the rest of the season. The Foreign Office says China must provide verifiable evidence that tennis player Peng Shuai is safe and well. The latest video, posted by Chinese state media, appears to show her at a tennis tournament in Beijing. She disappeared after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official 3 weeks ago. Over 40s will be able to book their COVID booster jab from tomorrow in England. NHS England says around 500,000 people in the age bracket are eligible for the third dose. And a UK first for Portsmouth, which has introduced a zebra crossing that lights up as people approach it. LED panels are triggered by sensors, making it more visible to drivers and also safer for pedestrians. If the lighting system proves successful, the concept could be replicated across other parts of the city. And that's it from me. You're right up to date. I'll have more of all of today's main news stories at the top of the hour.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News. For those who live in towns and cities, it can be easy to lose touch with what's going on in the world of farming and agriculture. So each week, we check in with those, as it were, at the coalface of our rural industries. And on that note, some good news for farmers this week. Millions of pounds of cash is now up for grabs in England with the launch of the Farming Investment Fund. It'll provide £27 million of grants to pay for new equipment and infrastructure. Mark Tufnell is the president of the Country Land and Business Association. There he is. Good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. It seems to be a great idea to help farming, which of course is a crucial sector. But call me cynical or old-fashioned, 27 million, how far is that going to go?
Well, it's not going to go that far. I mean, if you divide that 27 million by the number of farmers in England, it's about £300 a farm. So it's not, as you say, a huge amount, but it will help those people who do apply for it. So the first fund will provide bits of equipment between £2,000 and £25,000 grant, and it's 40% grant. And the next water management theme grant is going to provide grants of between £35,000 and £500,000. Now, for somebody being able to claim £500,000, that's really quite significant. It would help their business enormously.
Yeah, and so it's kit and it's the environment. The other thing that we should stress to folk is that the timetable for getting your bid in is pretty tight.
It's extremely tight. that's something that I raised with Janet Hughes, who's the lead DEFRA project officer on this. You have to have your applications for the first equipment scheme in by the 7th of January, and you have to have them in by the 12th of January for the main water themed scheme. So it is extremely tight. Now, I asked about the previous schemes and whether they had managed to meet their target, to which she replied, yes, we have. So I think when there's money out there, farmers, contractors, land managers, and this time foresters will be quick to get out there and apply.
Good. And a brutal question as well. Was it made fairly straightforward? Because, I mean, farmers are busy men and women, and the idea of having to sit down there and plough through something as complicated as some government forms and support forms, is this made pretty clear and pretty straightforward?
I think the answer is it will be relatively tricky, like all government forms, but you can get an agent to help you do it. I looked at the previous round, applying some equipment for myself. In the end, I decided not to go and proceed, but I know a number of people who have. So eventually, if money's there, farmers are very good at applying for it.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about the two chunks of it, as you were saying. I mean, first of all, in terms of bits of kit and machinery that will help infrastructure. I was talking to Liam Halligan, who covers business and economics for us here on GB News, about what I'd heard from a few farmers in my neck of the woods down in Hampshire, that getting bits of kit and hardware in the last 6 months or so has got increasingly difficult, whether it's supply chain or JCB moving manufacturer abroad or whatever. Are you picking up on that as well, or is it just Hampshire having a headache?
No, I think it's happening countrywide. So with the first Farming Equipment and Technology Fund, whilst you have to put your application in by the 7th of January, you have until the end of September to have purchased a piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Now, I know on the smaller pieces of kit that has caused supply problems, and I suspect with the larger pieces of equipment, such as direct drills, with machinery dealers coming under increasing pressure, as well as manufacturers, that will cause difficulties. Just as a case in point, I've been speaking to my own dealer about a drill that I could use within this scheme. He's been looking at it, and the lead time, I could probably get the drill by April, probably at the earliest, but I've got to get the order sorted out, and then I've obviously got to apply within this fund. So it is tight.
But as it were, the heart is in the right place, which is good and to be applauded. We're not here just to knock these schemes. The second tranche, as you explained, Mark, is about the environment. And when I read this, I had one single thought at the top of my little head, and that was joined up thinking. You've got the farming community that wants to do all it can for the environment. You've got the Department for the Environment and everybody in between suddenly saying, do you know what, in terms of flooding down in the plains, down in the West Country or up in East Anglia, all sorts of things going on that front here in the year of COP26. This is absolutely a bullseye, even if the money is not as big as it might be or the timescale is a bit tricky. But it's a brilliant example of joined up thinking.
Yes, and we're very pleased about that. We're very pleased that the Environment Agency's messages are getting through within DEFRA. Natural England are working together. And this particular scheme is about allowing farms to build on-farm reservoirs and then to have better irrigation. Now, of course, there will be the need to get an environmental permit, so we'll need to see proper cross-departmental working, and also we'll need to see proper working between local authorities and also DEFRA, because the local authorities will have to grant planning permission for the on-farm reservoirs. And we're very much hoping that because of the tight timescales, the 8-week consultation period that is there under statute can be properly looked at and properly run through within the timescales. Otherwise, this money will not be spent in time.
Sure, absolutely. Final question, if I may, Mark, and you have no warning of this question, or because I know you talked to the producers about what we did want to talk about. This has just cropped up in a separate conversation about rewilding and bringing back, whether it's lynxes or whether it's wolves, as Zach Goldsmith wants, to the British countryside. And I said, as a country dweller, to our guest Dominic, who's a wildlife activist, we need to have a big campaign if we're going to do this, so that folk know how to respect those animals, but also so that animals are put in places where they're not going to wreck farming. If it does happen, it does take a pretty profound debate, and you, as the president of the Country Land and Business Association, need to be at the heart of it.
Yes, we do. We've had many debates within our association, and I think it is, as Dominic quite rightly said, it's about balance. And particularly if you look at beavers as a classic case in point, 2 beavers is fine, 10 beavers is probably fine, 300 beavers is going to cause a problem. And that's what we've seen in parts of Scotland. And in parts of Scotland, they've captured those beavers and they've translocated them. And in certain cases, I know that Natural England have been asked, if the numbers do exceed a certain threshold, would they be able to introduce a lethal licence? And that's something that Natural England has said, yes, they are prepared to look at. But I think it's having the right numbers in the right place and to have a balance. And it is about a balance in the environment.
Sure. And again, as you said, and Dominic, to his credit, a grown-up, linked-up conversation about it all. Mark, a real pleasure. Thank you very much indeed for breaking into your Sunday afternoon to talk to us. That's Mark Tufnell, the president of the Country Land and Business Association. And just do remember what he was saying. If you're a farmer in that community, then go online, look up those grants, because you have until early in the new year to get the bid in if you want to get the money. Sounds to me like a brilliant idea, but it does take speedy footwork as well. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends. Still to come this afternoon, what would be on your list of must-haves if you were buying a new home? Well, apparently, veggie patches are among the essentials for young home buyers. So, what is drawing young people to gardening? And what are the benefits? We shall have more on that and so much more shortly. But first, let's bring you right up to date with the weather.
It's time to remind ourselves, there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking dry with sunny spells for many, those scattered showers for coastal areas. Plenty of sunny spells across the southwest of England this afternoon. Dry in the east, those scattered showers will continue pushing into the west, feeling cold, particularly in the wind. Across the southeast of England, and a mixture of sunny spells and showers, feeling colder than recent days with temperatures reaching 8 Celsius in London. Coastal showers will continue in Wales, though elsewhere it will be a generally dry day with sunny spells, a chilly day with blustery winds. A widely dry day across northwest England, though there may be a few showers in the far east. Plenty of sunny spells, but feeling chilly elsewhere, especially in the blustery winds along the coast. Scattered blustery showers will continue to affect northeastern England this afternoon, mostly dry away from coasts with plenty of sunny spells there too. For Scotland, it will be a bright and mostly dry afternoon with sunny spells. Some blustery showers will continue across northern and eastern coasts, feeling noticeably colder than of late. A mainly dry afternoon across Northern Ireland with plenty of sunny intervals. The odd shower will continue across northern coasts, feeling chilly with temperatures reaching around 8 Celsius in Belfast. Showers easing into this evening, though with plenty of clear skies around, it will be a cold night.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Join me, Nana Akweer, on Fridays, Saturdays and Sunday afternoons here on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as my panel and I take on some of the top stories hitting the headlines.
You can look up the statistics.
No, you look it up. I hug everyone We'll learn from it and try and move on. That's it. Opinion is at the heart of the show. It's a place for open and frank conversation, but without the fear of cancellation. So join me here on GB News on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons between 4 and 6 p.m.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends on GB News. What would be on your list of must-haves if you were buying a new home? Well, according to a new poll, surprise, surprise, veggie patches are amongst a few of the absolute essentials for homeowners in their early 30s. And since the start of the pandemic, thousands of Britons have been prompted to take up gardening and grow their own vegetables. So, what makes owning your own patch so appealing? Well, joining me now to talk about this is someone who knows a lot about allotments. That was well written. Otherwise known as the Laughing Gardener, it is, of course, the gardening expert and horticultural lecturer and broadcaster, Darren Rudge. Great to see you and that lovely smile that is always there. I mean, I'm guessing that those like me who read this and thought, that really surprises me, particularly amongst those in their 30s, to you, it's as predictable as the day is long because it's good, good, good.
Well, it is really, Alastair. I mean, I'm a professional garden designer as well, and quite often get asked by people in their 30s to have a vegetable area or an area where they can grow their own produce, designed into the garden space, particularly, new gardens. And it's all about sustainability. It's all about, people realising that actually they can grow their own food, and it's quite sustainable to actually do that. And it's not difficult at the end of the day. With a few simple principles, you can grow a whole range of vegetables and fruits in a very, very small urban garden space. You don't need massive spaces to be doing this. And it's become very, very, very popular during the pandemic.
And it may take 6-9 months until you get to the point of being able to harvest. But once you can start harvesting, you then start saving money as well.
Well, exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, grow what you eat, and that sounds pretty obvious, doesn't it? But you don't have to go to the supermarket and buy it at the end of the day. So, and that's what people have realised, that simple tasks, simple tips like your carrots, your sprouts, and your leeks and your potatoes, and it's the joy of actually growing that people get such a big buzz from, Alastair. When once you've grown that and it's on your plate and you're actually eating stuff that you've grown yourself, it just tastes 1,000 times better than shop bought produce.
Yeah, I mean, I remember as a child, my maternal grandmother had a lovely little vegetable patch in her garden next to the Anderson shelter, the bomb shelter, which that generation had as well. And one of the things that she loved loved growing most of all was rhubarb for two reasons: because it is a magnificent plant in its full glory. But with rhubarb, she could make jam, she could make crumble, she could make fool and what have you. So it's not just, as that picture showed, lovely carrots and spuds and what have you. It's the stuff that's more for sweets and puds, as it were, as well.
Well, again, with a resurgence in sort of arts and crafts things, so jams, jellies, all those sorts of things. So yeah, raspberries, gooseberries, blackberries, tayberries, loganberries, strawberries, all those sorts of things that people love to eat. And you buy from your shop. They're pretty simple to grow with a few simple techniques, a little bit of pruning at the end of the day, some fertiliser, and we've got most of this stuff, to fertilise our garden plants in our homes already. Epsom salts, a little bit of baking soda, those sorts of things, and you're there, really. You don't have to spend a lot of money, and that's exactly where people have found inspiration during the time of the pandemic.
And you mentioned at the top there that, of course, you're a renowned garden designer as well. Let's move from the 30s to people who've perhaps been a little bit luckier in life and have got a bit more space. Are you finding that people now are saying, I'd love you to come and design my garden, and I want it to be beautiful and palatial with rose terraces and this, that, and the other, but over here I want a bit of veggie patch as well?
Yeah, most definitely. And raised beds are really popular, made out of new sleepers now, pine sleepers or brick built. Even sustainable raised beds made from straw. Just buy a straw bale, channel the centre out of the straw bale, put some compost in there, and you can grow anything in there. It's really, really sustainable. And then, of course, when you've finished with the straw bale, you can put that onto the compost heap, and you can actually dig that into the garden space. But I would say that 90% of my garden designs now contain some area to actually grow some form of vegetables. And as I said earlier, it doesn't have to be a massive area to actually to grow. I did during COVID start a YouTube channel, Darren Rudge Laughing Gardener, and this is exactly what we were discussing, Alastair, was the fact that we produce 4 beds that are 1 metre by half a metre wide, and we grew a range of vegetables in those small beds to actually feed a family of 4. So
brilliant.
It's really simple. It's not difficult to do.
Good to see you, and it's all there on YouTube. Darren Rudge, really good of you to join us. Thank you very much indeed. It is exactly 5 seconds past 2 o'clock. I didn't want to be rude and interrupt Darren. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News. We've lots of brilliant conversations still to come in our remaining hour. Hello, if you're just joining us, welcome back if you were here from 12 o'clock or indeed from 11 o'clock. I am Alastair Stewart, and for the next hour, I'll be keeping you company with the stories that really matter across the country. We've plenty still to come. Shortly, I'll be sharing my take on our earlier discussion about care, and what a phenomenal conversation it's been, both with my brilliant guests, and we'll give you a taste of what some of them had to say, but even more importantly, your thoughts on the matter. Profound, thoughtful, and some of them deeply personal. Plus, we'll have all of the latest news from the world of showbiz and from royalty. But first, it's time for All of the News with Simon Pusey.
Thank you, Alastair. I'm Simon Pusey. This is your news at 2 o'clock. The taxi driver who survived the Liverpool terror attack says it's a miracle that he's alive. In a statement, David Perry described the bombing as an evil act and said he's thankful no one else was injured. He and his wife Rachel also thanked the public for their amazing generosity after the Remembrance Sunday blast. There's been a second night of violence in the Netherlands, with dozens of people being arrested in The Hague. Protesters set fires on the streets and threw fireworks at police as they demonstrated against tough new COVID measures. It comes a day after riots in Rotterdam, where at least 7 people were injured. Thousands of people have also been demonstrating across other European countries, including Austria, Italy and Croatia. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been sacked as Manchester United manager. That's after the club held an emergency board meeting following the team's 4-1 loss to Watford yesterday. United have suffered 5 league defeats in 7 matches. Coach Michael Carrick will take charge while the club looks for an interim manager for the rest of the season. The Foreign Office says China must provide verifiable evidence that tennis player Peng Shuai is safe and well. The latest video, posted by Chinese state media, appears to show her at a tennis tournament in Beijing. Fellow players, the UN and the White House have all voiced their concern for the welfare of the Wimbledon doubles champion. She disappeared after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official 3 weeks ago. Conservative MP Tim Loughton told GB News that China needs to be brought to account.
They just do not tolerate any criticism. And that's why many of us have called for, and again, Parliament voted for, a diplomatic boycott of the forthcoming Beijing Olympics, which incredibly the International Olympic Committee awarded to Beijing, despite all the publicity about the human rights abuses, despite what's going on with genocide and everything else. It's just inconceivable that we should be sending VIPs to this propaganda exercise in Beijing next February.
More migrants, including young children, have crossed the channel in the past 24 hours. Official figures haven't been confirmed, but it's believed hundreds made the journey. More than 24,700 people have arrived in the UK so far this year, almost 3 times more than in 2020. Former Chief Immigration Officer Kevin Sanders told GB News solutions are needed or the situation will only get worse.
I feel that probably we need to come up with the offshore processing centres. That will send a message to the migrants. It will certainly stop them coming across the channel because they won't want to be flown off to Albania or somewhere else. 25,000 crossings this year. And if we don't do something, it'll be 100,000 next year.
The UK's Brexit minister says the country will need to safeguard its position in other ways if it's not able to reach an agreement with the EU over the Northern Ireland Protocol. Lord Frost says there's momentum for the government to secure a solution based on consensus following a meeting in Brussels with the European Commission Vice President. It comes hours after protesters gathered at the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, demanding post-Brexit arrangements to be protected. Author and political commentator Kevin Marr told GB News the UK is still weighing up the EU's proposals.
None of it is, can that process be smooth? Now, the European Union is saying, look, we're prepared to reduce paperwork checks by 50% and checks on goods coming in by 80%. And that should ensure that there is much more smooth trading between Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The question really for Lord Frost, the government's Brexit negotiator and the minister leading negotiations with the European Union and his counterpart, Maros Sefcovic, is that broadly enough?
From tomorrow, over 40s in England will be able to book their COVID booster jab. NHS England says around 500,000 people in the age bracket are eligible for the 3rd dose. The government is encouraging people to take the jab to prevent another wave of cases. And a UK first in Portsmouth, where a zebra crossing has been introduced that lights up as people approach. LED panels are triggered by sensors, making it more visible to drivers and also safer for pedestrians. If the lighting system proves to be successful, the concept could be replicated across other parts of the city. Well, that's it from me. I'll bring you the latest headlines in around half an hour. Now let's get back to Alastair Stewart and friends.
Simon, thanks very much indeed. I am Alastair Stewart, and for the next hour, I'll be keeping you company along with friends and friendly guests. Still to come. In just a moment, you'll be hearing my take on our top story today, the care system. Most of us will end up needing it, but who pays for it? The government's come up with new plans to reform the system, but have we actually been sold a pup? Plus, with plenty going on in the world of royalty, we'll get all of the latest with a good friend of mine and a good friend of this show, royal expert Charles Ray. And we'll also be speaking to a rising star in the world of engineering who's come up with an invention that could help slow and even extinguish fires on high-rise buildings. Now, that is a brilliant idea. GB News is all about you, our viewers. So any burning question or stories that you think we need to cover, no matter how big or how small they may appear, we do genuinely want to hear them. So get your voice heard by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk, and do please put Alastair Stewart in the subject line. Before we get to your views on the issue and mine, let's take a look back at what some of my guests have had to say about social care. We began with Baroness Ros Altman, who outlined the issues facing the social care system, explaining how at times it often protects those with the most wealth.
Well, actually, you described it extremely well, Alastair, because what we are being told is that people will have to pay a maximum of £86,000 for care. That's just not true. Most people, if they were to ever reach the cap, they would have already spent well over £150,000 because they will have had to pay for their own accommodation, board and lodging, and so on. And also, if somebody wants to live in a care home, perhaps that is nearer to their family or of a better standard than the council would itself use, any extra money that costs doesn't count towards the cap either. So what you have is a system that seems to protect the assets of the very well-off older people while wiping out much or all of the accumulated savings and assets that people in, let's say, the middle class or the working class will have built up through their lives. And this only affects those people who get ill in later life in the wrong way. Because again, as you said, there are some cases, such as if you get cancer or if you have perhaps a stroke, where the NHS will pick up all the tab.
Baroness Ros Altman, and I remind you, she is a former pensions minister and has spent a lifetime studying pensions and care for the elderly. A really authoritative voice there with some frightening observations about what you and I are being offered by Her Majesty's government. Caroline Abrahams is from Age UK, biggest single charity in this country, caring for the concerns of those who are older than most of us. She said that the government have sold us a pup, as I put it in my introduction, with the latest social care reform proposals, and she doesn't believe that the British public will accept them.
Oh, yeah, it definitely is a pup. It was always going to be a pup, even before the government made its latest sort of change of drawing money out of the system. And that's because it only deals with one problem, which is this problem if you need care a long time and have to pay a lot for it. But as Ros said at the end of her interview, the bigger problem really is lots of older people can't get any care at all. And if they can get it, it's not very good. And that's because there's just not enough money in the system. And above all, that's down to the Treasury. And people like us watched the spending review with incredible interest and were hoping very much that the Chancellor would be generous to social care. But he wasn't. And so the end result is we've got this not very good solution that the government's tried to say will sort the problem out on the back of a really underfunded system. And it's a recipe for disaster and just for letting people down. So anybody who was hoping that things were going to be much better for them in future, unless they are extremely well off and need care for a long time and can take advantage of the cap, it looks like they're going to be very, very badly let down. And I don't think you can say to the British public and to older people, we're going to solve this problem for the future, and then a couple of months later say, oh, no, sorry, we're not going to do that now. We're going to take a big chunk of the money out. I just don't think that's just not fair. And it's not very reasonable either. And
Caroline Abrahams, Chief Executive of Age UK. Another been there, done it guest was the former Conservative Health Secretary, Stephen Dorrell. Stephen expressed his view that the issue of social care reforms brings into question the role of state intervention in personal issues. Individuals, through their own responsibility, should do.
I do think that, but I think it's important in saying that to enter a major qualification, because too often, Alastair, that is code for saying that what we want to do is introduce charges for core NHS services. I am not in favour of charging for the core functions of the National Health Service. The free offer of the National Health Service seems to me it's important to safeguard that in order then to have precisely the kind of discussion that you are advocating about the broader range of care and public services, which actually the quality of people's housing, the range of services that are delivered by local authorities are often are at least as influential in terms of determining healthy outcomes as what's done in a doctor's surgery or in a hospital. So thinking of all of those as a single range of services delivering healthy outcomes for citizens, I'm very strongly in favour of that. Indeed, until we start to think about it in that way, I think we shall continue to end up, we'll continue to be in the world that we're in, which is that the accidents that fall through the system unnecessarily, it shouldn't happen. They end up in the National Health Service suffering from health conditions they didn't need to suffer from, creating avoidable demand on the NHS.
Former Health Secretary Stephen Dorrell. The Chief Executive Officer of the Brendan Care Foundation, Marianne Wanstall, outlined just how complicated reforming social care policy could be, saying that the government really has to explain to the public what those new proposals really mean.
There are benefits to making sure that people have their assets taken into consideration when it comes to funding. But we would certainly agree, based on what we know so far, that the CAP process and what's being introduced in terms of the means testing approach will impact those with less assets more than it will impact those who have more assets at their disposal. And I think in particular this piece around what's not covered, so anything that excludes care. And there's a lot of grey areas in this because we have staff who support our homes but who may not directly be providing care but are still involved in that delivery. And it's understanding how much of those costs can also be included. So it's a complicated area for us. So anything that is a living cost, so that's the accommodation, the food, the housekeeping costs, the laundry, the general maintenance costs, all of that, none of that is included in this cap. That still has to be funded by individuals and therefore go through that process. Now, it's clear that increasing the level at which support can be assessed is going to help some people in some cases, but it is a minefield and people really do need to try and understand better and earlier and have those conversations earlier. And I think also, people need to be given more options. There need to be more alternatives for people. On one of our sites, as well as a care home, we provide accommodation that people can rent where one of the family may have a diagnosis of dementia. That allows people to trial living in supported living in a way that doesn't necessarily involve them immediately making huge decisions like selling their house.
Marianne Wanstall, who's the Chief Executive of the Brendan Care Foundation, a charity with which I'm also involved. I wanted to do this subject because I thought that there was a kind of cloud hanging over what the governments were proposing, not because it was necessarily right or wrong, but because it simply wasn't clear. And my Twitter feed and the Twitter feed here at GB News got really very, very hot. So let's hear a little more. We've already done one dollop because we needed it more time. So many of you were emailing and tweeting. So let's have another dollop, as it were, of your thoughts. And I'm going to start with Mike, who emailed us. Social care and the NHS is a bottomless money pit. Throwing more taxpayer funding in is pointless because it will never be enough. An integrated care system is needed. NHS, care homes, hospices, family carers at home, and even assisted dying should work together. With the result that there are many bed blockers in hospitals, dementia patients in homes who will only ever deteriorate with little quality of life, little tax benefits to support home care. Need I go on? Well, I think you need to go on just with one more phrase, Mike, and that is that you agree with me that what we really need is a profound rethink and a lot more clarity on what is on offer and whose responsibility is what. But thanks for that, Mike. Janine, also via email, what a disgraceful government that puts illegal immigrants in four-star hotels and makes our own elderly pay for care. This is why the majority of the country are angry about this. Phil also takes to email, we all need to be realistic about what it will cost to look after us when we get old. Absolutely 100% right, Phil. It should be part of our financial planning. Those of us who have a pension should not be throwing it away on travel and second homes, but saving it for our older age. Phil, I totally agree with you, not only a rethink, but also a recognition that there is an element of personal responsibility in personal care. So thank you for that. Paul takes to Twitter to say, bit of a cake and eat it scenario, though. Why do I pay national insurance my entire career to then have to pay more on top? Either adjust national insurance or don't ask for more after it's been mishandled by central government. Again, Paul, spot on. Let's be clear about what pays for what and what doesn't. And I'll tell you what, when the government asks us for more in national insurance to pay for NHS and care, it would be jolly good if some of it actually went to care and not all of it to the NHS. Thanks for that, Paul. Debbie is also on Twitter and she says, my 66-year-old sister's currently living this nightmare. She had worked and supported herself all her life. She now has to pay £1,400 per week for her care. Her home is being sold. This could happen to any one of us. Absolutely, totally spot on, Debbie. And my thoughts to you and to your 66-year-old sister. Pamela, also on Twitter, I think people should pay all of the costs if the money is there. No questions as to what should be taken. Take the lot if necessary. It's a tough line, Pamela, but it's not one that a lot of people disagree with, and there's a lot of support for that approach. We need to be realistic. It's not always the responsibility of the state, which means the responsibility of other taxpayers. And finally, Barbara sends in an intriguing alternative option email. You might find more people taking equity release, so there's not much left when they need care. My view is this is a bit like biting off your nose. Well, it's an interesting thought. And before you go down the road of equity release, as my very good friend Martin Lewis has suggested, do read very, very closely into the detail of the repayment, interest rates and the whole package, but it is worth looking at. So thank you for all of those. We have run out of time for that, so to leave time for my take as promised. My father worked hard all of his life, briefly for Lloyds Bank, and then he gave a lifetime of service to the Royal Air Force. In retirement, he was a local councillor. After my mother died, he had a series of strokes and he descended into dementia. He spent his last brief years in care. When he died, his estate had been savagely diminished. He left very little in his will. He wasn't a hugely wealthy man, but he had worked, he had saved, he had made provision, and it was wiped out. My brother and I nodded it through because it was the right thing to do to keep him well and safe. But it made us think about the system of how that could happen. So the learning curve about care was, for my brother and for me, a brutal lesson. So here we are, several years on, and the Prime Minister rightly pledges a root and branch reform of this service. Now, the criticisms that you've heard this afternoon from those who know and from those who seek to help the elderly and frail have demonstrated it remains a service in need of further, but more thoughtful reform. The cap, to me, seems a helpful lid on costs, but the level at which it is set is patently unsatisfactory. You heard that from virtually all of my contributors, although Stephen Dorrell, and I would underline this, said it's a heck of a lot better than it used to be, and as I said in my introduction, it's better even than Dilnot said in his recommendations a decade ago. The exclusion of social security support from that cap, however, seems to me just plain wrong and will clearly hit the poorest hardest. They are more likely to need social security help because they are the poorest. So it becomes a double whammy. And next year's higher national insurance costs, which so many of you referred to in your emails and tweets, seem especially cruel because despite, yet again, the promises, little of the money will actually go to care. It will continue to feed the voracious appetite for cash of the unreformed NHS. I really do think that ministers need to think again. Listen to me if you like, but more importantly, listen to Sir Andrew Dilnot, who crafted the first plans for reform. Listen to Ros Altman, who was on the programme first thing at midday, who's given a lifetime of service to the elderly on pensions and, crucially, on care. Listen to our viewers, who've given thoughtful and heartbreaking testimony about what it's like dealing with this dysfunctional system. But let's also have a fundamental debate, as I said to Stephen Dorrell, about what the state will and will not pay for. If somebody rewrote Peter Lilly's little list of where the fault lines lay in the welfare state, I suspect now, 30, 40 years on, care would be very near the top. It's not that vulnerable people are on the fiddle. It's just that it doesn't work for those who are in the most serious need. And it operates as a shock to many people who haven't given time to read up and find out what they are entitled to. I'm the first to acknowledge that the state cannot and shouldn't do everything. Personal responsibility is crucially important. But if the state decides it can do something on care, then it should be much clearer about what it will do and what it won't do. Accommodation, one of the single most expensive elements of care, is not included unless you are profoundly ill. My nightmare is that many of you don't understand that until it hits you in the face. People confronted with the need for care, for themselves, for their loved ones, their parents or their grandparents, will face the prospects with fear. They deserve honesty so as not to add to that fear. It is not a job well done. It needs to be, because our most vulnerable depend upon it. And we have lots more to come in the last half hour and a little bit of Alastair Stewart and friends. From Strictly to Sports Stars, we'll be getting the very latest from the world of showbiz. But first, it's the weather. See you in a couple of minutes.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this evening's weather, and the UK is looking dry and cold for many. Let's take a look at the details. Skies will clear in the southwest and temperatures will fall. It will be cold tonight, and in the countryside temperatures could dip below freezing. Some showers will continue in the southeast and it will be windy around the coast. There will be clear spells between the showers. Wales will have a dry and clear evening with the frost forming tonight. Temperatures could fall as low as -2 degrees Celsius in parts of the countryside. Clear skies also extend into the Midlands with a chilly evening to come and temperatures expected to fall quickly. A strong wind will continue to blow along the northeast coast, which brings showers to northeast England. These will be blustery at times with some possible hail. Southern Scotland should stay mostly dry with clear skies, and it will turn rather chilly tonight with temperatures as low as -5 degrees Celsius in some spots. A dry and clear night in Northern Ireland too. It will be breezy around the coast, but turning cold inland. Tomorrow will be a chilly but bright day for most. However, skies will be grey across northern Scotland with some drizzle, and that is how the weather is shaping up overnight into tomorrow morning.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News, and thank you very much indeed for so doing. Just over half an hour to go, and it's time to get all of the latest from the world of entertainment, from Strictly Come Dancing to the latest on Jack Grealish's Love Life. We have it all, and with me to spill the beans on the latest showbiz stories is Hannah Hope, assistant showbiz editor of The Sun on Sunday. Really good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I always confess, against perhaps some expectations, that I'm actually a serious Strictly Come Dancing fan. And as I said to you during the break, I'm a huge fan of Rose, and my wife is a huge fan of John and Johannes. So we'll start with me first, because it's always the best place to start. This I was delighted to pick up and see in the Mail on Sunday. Rose, brilliant last night, but potentially going from strength to strength.
Absolutely. I mean, the BBC are always very good at capitalising on the popularity of their contestants. We saw it several years ago with Stacey Dooley. And absolutely, I think Rose will get a great contract for a documentary series. And, of course, she's also raised huge awareness for the deaf community, which has been amazing. I mean, last week when she performed In Silence, I mean, that was a real, shocking, sensational moment. And I do think that we're going to see that nominated and even getting the TV BAFTA Moment of the Year.
Oh, really?
I'd
vote for that, actually.
Absolutely.
I really would, because as the judges said, 2 or 3 of them, I think, that was the most profound. I mean, there's dancing and dancing, but there's also something that is profound, and it was a profound moment in what's essentially light entertainment.
Absolutely.
But so lifting. Now, you're going to make my wife very, very jealous, because I gather you had an interview during the week.
I did indeed. I was lucky enough to have a very exciting Zoom call with John Waite and his dance partner, Johannes Rabades. And let me just say, John Waite was wearing a tank top. They were in the middle of training and his muscles were absolutely rippling.
I'm told there's no point in either my wife or you particularly expressing an interest in these matters, however.
No. He's in a very happy relationship with his boyfriend. But it was really interesting to actually chat to them about the show. Yeah. I mean, it's been a history-making series. Obviously, the first same-sex, all-male couple. And John was saying that he has been having therapy throughout the series, not to deal with actually how stressful Strictly is, but he has an eating disorder. He actually suffers from bulimia, and he has to have an hour-long therapy session every week to help him concentrate on that. And he's actually said that he's put weight on during the show because he's not going to the gym as much. He's doing 12 hours of dance training, so you actually lose a little bit of muscle. But I think him and Johannes will be lifelong friends, and it's been a joy to watch them dance.
I think it'll be between the two of them, Rose and
yes,
John.
Same.
Your own magnificent newspaper has, here we are, this elegant, beautiful woman in her white cosy is Jack Grealish's regular girlfriend, Sasha Atwood. There is talk here of dalliances, but dalliances may be coming to an end.
Absolutely. So the story of the week has absolutely been Jack Grealish's off-pitch affairs. He's been linked to actress Emily Atack. Later in the week, he was linked to Love Island's Amber Rose, and he has a long-term girlfriend, Sasha Atwood, of course. But we revealed in the paper today that they are going to make it work. They're sticking together, and I think the other women will be dropped from the lineup, as it were. But this is nothing new, is it?
Not, as footballers would say, put on the bench, but actually out of the frame.
They are completely dropped, yes.
I do think it's for the best. Now, those are the two things I wanted to talk to you about. What did you want to mention to me in addition to any or all of that?
So, other than Strictly Come Dancing, the biggest show on entertainment show on telly is I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. It starts tonight on ITV. Now, even if you're not a fan of this show, lots of people like to see these celebrities suffer. It's moved from the jungle in Australia to a castle in North Wales.
I mean, just about it, we had a fantastic package about the impact that's all having on the castle and the village.
The local community.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
fantastic.
Created a complete tourist hotspot in the area, plunging loads of money into this obscure village in North Wales, which is obviously a really good thing. Yeah. But yeah, tonight's show starts with an hour and 40-minute bumper special. We've got Richard Madeley on the show. We've got Louise Minchin on the show. David Ginola on the show. So, yeah, it's going to be an exciting series. We actually have Louise Minchin walking a 200-foot plank high in the sky, and I think she has a little bit of a panic. I mean, no one really likes that kind of height to deal with.
Louise doesn't do panic. She's a lovely woman, and she loves horses as well, so she's one of my absolute pin-ups, and I wish her well. Hannah, great to see you. I hope you'll come back and see us again one weekend.
Absolutely.
Lovely to see you. Thank you very much indeed. That is Hannah Hope, the assistant showbiz editor at The Sun on Sunday. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends. Plenty more still to come this afternoon, including a royal news roundup from The Sun newspaper's former royal correspondent Charles Ray. But first, let's bring you a full roundup of the latest news headlines with Simon.
Thank you very much, Alastair. I am Simon Pusey. Here are your latest headlines. The taxi driver who survived the Liverpool terror attack says it's a miracle that he's alive. In a statement, David Perry described the bombing as an evil act and said he's thankful no one else was injured. He and his wife Rachel also thanks the public for their amazing generosity after the Remembrance Sunday blast. There's been a second night of violence in the Netherlands, with dozens of people being arrested in The Hague. Protesters set fires in the streets and threw fireworks at police as they demonstrated against tough new COVID measures. It comes a day after riots in Rotterdam, where at least 7 people were injured. The Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has been sacked as Manchester United manager. That's after the team suffered a 4-1 loss to Watford yesterday. It's the 5th league defeat in 7 matches. Coach Michael Carrick will take charge while the club looks for an interim manager for the rest of the season. The Foreign Office says China must provide verifiable evidence that tennis player Peng Shuai is safe and well. The latest video posted by Chinese state media appears to show her at a tennis tournament in Beijing. She disappeared after she made sexual assault allegations against a former Chinese government official 3 weeks ago. Over 40s will be able to book their COVID booster jab from tomorrow in England. NHS England says around 500,000 people in the age bracket are eligible for the 3rd dose. And a UK first for Portsmouth, which has introduced a zebra crossing that lights up as people approach it. LED panels are triggered by sensors, making it more visible to drivers and also safer for pedestrians. If the lighting system does prove successful, the concept could be replicated across other parts of the city. That's it from me. I'll be back with a full update at the top of the hour.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. Over a drink, we have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching Alastair Stewart and Friends here on GB News. Now to some royal news with a very dear friend of mine. There's plenty about this weekend, from the Duchess of Cornwall hitting the headlines to rumours of a royal war with the BBC. And that great friend of mine is the former royal correspondent from the Sun newspaper, Charles Ray. Delighted to say, in the studio this time.
Yes.
We were just saying the last time we were actually face-to-face was at the funeral, or memorial service, I should say, of one of the greats.
Yes,
who ran GB News, who ran GMTV, rather. Let's go to that top story then, because in fact both bites of it are the front page of the Mail on Sunday. I'll just hold it up for folk at home. So here's the bit. Camilla will lead the nation in the Queen's big Jubilee celebration. So that's positive. Then you go down here. Royals at war with BBC over tittle-tattle documentary. BBC don't know what's bad for them, do they?
No, they don't. I mean, I was a bit surprised to find that they were jumping up and down about this, to be perfectly honest. Now, the presenter's a guy at the BBC, Amal Rajan, who's a very, very good journalist, and sneeringly they describe him as a self-confessed Republican, as if it's some sort of disease. Well, you can be a Republican and still present a
But they also point out that he's on record, not just chatting.
Oh, no, he's on record.
He's on record as saying he's anti-monarchy.
He's anti-monarchy, and he thinks the monarchy is absurd.
Yeah.
So I don't mind anybody. They've got their viewpoints. That's absolutely fine. But what's interesting is, and I can't quite put my finger on it, that they're saying that the royals are upset over the content, which they haven't seen. So I'm not actually sure which bit they're upset about. If you remember I think a few months ago, there was another documentary which they complained about, a segment involving Omid Scobie, who wrote the book, Finding Freedom, and he alluded to William briefing on Harry's mental health. Now, that was taken out of that programme. I don't know if this allegation...
That's the allegation on the Mail on Sunday.
It's
Certainly,
back
it's
in
that
again. It's back again.
And I think the courts, and there are 2 or 3 of them now, you know better than I do, are all saying absolutely not. And going forward, even things like the pool, as we call it, and you're very familiar with it, where instead of sending 18 cameras along to a royal event, we send one and we then all share it.
Yeah.
BBC could be out of it.
They could be. Yes, I mean, the royals have had a love-hate relationship with the BBC for a great many years. They have loved to hate the BBC for a variety of reasons, not least of all the Panorama interview with the Princess of Wales, which they keep dredging up, and they keep sort of protecting Martin Bashir and everything else. So it's interesting. What I'm surprised at is, why have they not given the royals the right of reply? Why have they not put these allegations to someone in the royal circle so they can come back with a statement and say,
we're of an age, it's a golden rule in a profession that we've loved all our lives and worked for, is you can say whatever you want if you've got a good source or two for it, but you've got to give the target of your criticism the right of reply.
You have,
and you can put at the bottom of it, we asked Parents' House and they declined to comment.
They declined to comment. That's absolutely. I made a profession of no comments from the royals, but you have to give them a right to reply. Now, this piece seems to indicate to me that they haven't done that. They're just going to drop this on them. All this sort of stuff with the BBC dates back to that famous programme with the Queen, the barbecue and everything else, which is now locked away and
kept in the vaults for
kept
decades.
In the vaults. It appeared on YouTube, I think, a couple of years ago, but was quickly taken down. So there's a lot of
delicate stuff.
There's a lot of delicate stuff.
Let's take an upbeat one because we're getting towards the end, and we always like to look at the upbeat stuff as well. Camilla leading the nation in the Queen's big Jubilee celebrations. A little earlier, one of my charities that I support, the Ebony Horse Club, of which she's president, were on singing her praises from the work that she did at Ascot yesterday with the kids and what have you. Tough question, but you know where I'm coming from. Has the nation now finally fully embraced Camilla?
I think 90% of the way there. I think we are in for a bit of controversy when the inevitable happens and Charles is king and she is queen. You see, we've had royal aides over the years sort of say, oh, she's never going to be queen, she's going to be princess consort. There's no such title in the British royal family. She has got to be queen. If you marry the king, you are the queen. So I think there'll be a bit of controversy at that time as to, there'll be memories of Diana. She should have been queen. Unfortunately, she can't be because she was killed in a car crash. But the rehabilitation of Camilla over the years has been sensational. I mean, this is not bad for a woman who allegedly had bread rolls thrown at her in a car park, a supermarket car park, many, many moons ago. And she is now a key member of the royal family. She's there with Charles, supporting the Queen, who, as we know, is 95 and not in the best of health at the moment. And she's going to be a central part in the Jubilee celebration. I think she's leading the big lunch, as they call it. That's going to be one of the main things. And she's on the Privy Council as well. So she's well in there.
Red boxes and government papers.
And she's the one who is advising, unofficial advisor, if you like, to the Prince of Wales, who will be the king at some stage. She's got a big seat at the table.
Tricky weekend for Her Majesty.
Yes.
Anniversary, not of the passing of the Duke, because that was in April, but anniversary of the wedding.
Yes, it is. I mean, it would have been 74 years that the couple would have been married, a very, very long time. But I was just trying to check before I came on about the dual christening that's happening at Windsor this afternoon. Zara's baby, Lucas, and Eugenie's baby, August. They're having a joint celebration this afternoon. The Queen is supposed to have been there. Now, I haven't heard any reports yet that the Queen is in fact there. I hope she is. We have seen her last week. We saw her saying hello or goodbye to the head of the British Army, and also on Zoom saying hello to the new ambassadors. So let's hope she's there today.
I think we've got I don't know if we've got the picture. This is the opening of this country, and the Prime Minister and Copter. Have we got Her Majesty welcoming the outgoing Chief of the Defence Staff? We don't have that one. Therefore, bear with me while I describe it. So, Nick Carter, General Nick Carter, has been Chief of the Defence Staff, head of the Army, the Navy and the Air Force, the whole bit. He's a lovely guy. I know him from down in Hampshire. And he comes in dressed in what's called his formal number one kit, they call it, and comes in on stiff shoulder, what have you. And there's the dog on the ground, who is a Corgi Dachshund mixture. And he kind of steps back. It's a lovely moment.
Those corgis, I believe, I've been near those corgis. They're vicious little things. Oh, yeah, at times. I have actually seen a footman take them for a walk and had to try and get a kick at one of them because it bit his ankle.
That's a brief career for a footman. I was going to say. Charles, we have to end on something to which there is no upside, and that is Andrew, Duke of York. The Sunday Times have got a spread on the loan story, and this is, a £1.5 million loan from way back, and then another one to repay that one, and now another one to repay that one. So all of the sexual allegations, which, as we always say, quite rightly, he absolutely denies. There are now misfinance allegations, and people were writing on Friday and Saturday about the fact that he's just completely living beyond his means now. That's the allegation.
Yes, I mean, he gets £250,000 from the Queen as a stipend, plus his £20,000 Navy pension. And this financier, this David Rowland, who runs this bank in Luxembourg, now the bank loaned Andrew 1.5 million, and David Rowland then gave him 1.5 million to pay it back. So it's very, very murky. But to be perfectly honest, Alastair, yes, it's grist to the mill. The sexual allegations is where the story is, and next year is going to be a very, very difficult year for Prince Andrew and for the royal family.
Sure. We've talked about this on one or two occasions in the past. Whatever the final outcome of the American allegations are, and it may go to court, it may not go to court, it may be an out-of-house settlement, are you of the view that we are ending 2021 with a clear view that in the new year, Andrew, Duke of York, will be totally and permanently out of the firm?
Oh, absolutely. There's no way back for Andrew. And if, at the end of the day, the court in New York decides that he's in the right and they accept his version of events, the stench that will hang around Andrew will last for the rest of his life. Because you'll always remember that he tried hard to get out of all this, and it would have been far easier for him to speak up front right at the start and answer the allegation straight away. The Emily Maitlis interview he did with the BBC Newsnight did not do him any favours whatsoever. It left so many questions. Mind you, it was a good advert for the Woking Pizza Express or Pizza Hut or whatever it was.
And perspiration. Yes. Charles, always a pleasure, and a real pleasure today to have you in the studio. So
it's a pleasure to be here.
For that. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. And
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me, the great Charles Ray. So, we have regular features on this programme. Talking to Charles and others about royal matters is one of them. Our country life element with the farming community is another. But one of my favourites is perhaps the best way to finish off the programme today, and indeed the weekend. It is our Rising Star segment. And my next guest is certainly one to watch in the world of engineering and business. This young man is not only a budding engineer, and we've had them before, men and women, and power to their elbow, but crucially, he's also an inventor and an entrepreneur, and he is behind an invention called Safety Clad that could help slow and even extinguish fires on high-rise buildings. Now, we all know that an example of that has been on folks' minds for a very, very long time, and it remains an issue for many, many other high-rise blocks around the country. The system used stored rainwater as a fire suppression method. And the stored rainwater would be heated by a building's fire and create water vapour, which is emitted to help slow and eventually extinguish the fire to save lives and property. And I'm delighted to say that the brilliant young man behind all of that is sitting there now in the studio with me, and it's Jack. Is it Willapot?
Willapot, yeah.
Willapot. Brilliant inventions, if a complicated surname. I mean, the thing that struck me about this is, as with many great inventions,
yes,
how did the penny drop? What did you put together with what to think, I know what we could do, it's this?
I think the aim was to use the sort of the heat and the energy of the fire itself to almost get the fire to self-destruct. So I'm not too... It's hard to put my finger on exactly where I put everything together, but I just started with some different ideas, and eventually it all came together into
but let me butt in simply because the pictures come up on the screen, and it's one of those great illustrations that actually does show that what you're doing is you're building into the original construct something that, God willing, will never be needed, but if it is needed, it's there.
Yes, yeah, so the pipes are actually within the panel, and then those are externally fitted to the building, so, yeah, as I say, the aim is just to slow the fire down on the building and protect the property, but mainly give anyone inside the building time to escape and potentially stop the fire entirely.
And literally save lives, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. So that's the engineering bit, got that. Where did the entrepreneur bit come from? Because very often young people will come up with brilliant ideas but not have a clue how to make a bob or two out of it.
With Safety Clad, it's not the only money that I sort of got from it was a couple of competitions that I entered, a university competition and the ICE Emerging Engineers competition. Before I went to university, I had just a small business at home, which I still do over the summer and weekends to fund sort of my degree in Cardiff. So Safety Clad at the moment is just still an ongoing project, but potentially in the future maybe could be something that could eventually actually be in use in the real world.
Yeah. There's another rather famous person who began, like you, as a bright, young and very eloquent, if I may say so, young man, doodling on bits of paper, coming up with ideas, and is now one of the richest men in the country, and that is the great James Dyson. You've rubbed shoulders with him.
Not.
Well, you know what I mean.
Yes, yeah. So I entered Safety Clad after the university competition and the ICE competition in Wales. I entered Safety Clad into the James Dyson Awards, which is an award he runs every year for all around the world, and he gets lots of fantastic entries from all around the world. The winner this year was someone from Loughborough, which was a really, really good designer. So yeah.
What did the Loughborough guy do?
He created a medical device which, in the case of a stab wound, was sort of you could pump in. I can't remember, but it sort of inflated a bag, I think, on the inside of the wound. Stop bleeding. That's it. Yes.
See, yeah. I've got this real thing about people like you and the person from Loughborough as well, is that what we need more than anything at the moment in this country is an ability for us to embrace brilliant young men and women at our universities and our colleges and doing apprenticeships and what have you, to say, go and think the impossible, the impossible, and we will then encourage you. Have you ever sensed that you get enough support at Cardiff University for what you're trying to do, or other agencies?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of my tutors and lecturers that I got in touch with to help on the project were really, really supportive and gave me a lot of good ideas and things to look at, and gave me a lot of opinions, which is always what was needed, really, when developing the project. So, yeah, definitely.
What is that a picture of?
So this is a prototype which I made at home.
Right, that's why they put it up on the screen.
Yes, yeah.
So, all cleared with your mum and dad. I'm about to set fire to the front room. Part of an entrepreneurial experiment.
They were away for the weekend, so yeah. So no, but that was a small prototype that I made at home, and run a few different tests just at home with testing different sizes of evacuation pipes and things like that.
And the copper pipes are the bits that the natural rainwater builds up in a reservoir and then are fed there and are sparked, literally, not metaphorically, by the heat.
Literally, yeah. So it's all self-initiating, yeah. So
where did crepes come from? And a creperie? Because you do that as well.
Yes, that was before university. That was the small business before I went to university. I had a couple of gap years after my A-levels at home, and that was, doing crepes. My father's French, so it came from that side of the family, and it was a great couple of years, and something which I still do. Travel back from Cardiff on weekends and cater weddings and events like that, and
is it? I mean, I do love a crepe, and I've bought them in France and I bought them here. Involves quite a bit of kit, doesn't it? I mean, it's not just a hot plate.
Yeah, it started off...
So were you on your bike or something, or with a little trailer?
Well, yeah, when I started off, it just started very simply with one hot plate and just borrowed a gazebo from my mum and dad.
And you made the batter yourself and the mixes?
That's it, yeah.
Oh, lovely.
And then...
What's your favourite? Lemon and sugar? Please say lemon and
sugar. Just Nutella for me. But lemon and sugar is...
Oh, you get on with my son Freddie. He loves the Nutella.
Yeah, Nutella's always popular.
And does that still come out to play occasionally if you need a bit of extra money?
Yes, definitely, yeah.
You are an entrepreneur at heart. You meet the need of crepe lovers at weddings and parties and so on.
Yeah.
We've got about a minute left. What's the next ambition? You graduate?
In 2 years' time.
2 years' time, OK, so you're a thinker. What would be the next thing that you'd like to do? Perhaps go and work for James Dyson? I don't know. And what's the long-term ambition?
I think in the near future, I just want to make sure that I get as best a degree as I can do.
Yes,
do as best as possible whilst I'm there, make the most of it, move forward with my project whilst I'm there, and I've got the support of the tutors and the lecturers, and in the distant future, I'm not sure yet, but just, keep enjoying the projects and different things, and, just carry on plugging away and see what happens, I think.
My final piece of advice to you, other way around, is that the finest minds, and I'm lucky enough to be father to a few of them, are open minds. So keep studying, get a great degree.
Thank you.
And I wish you well, and congratulations on what you've already done. Our rising star, ladies and gentlemen, Jack Willapott. That is it from me today. I'm Alastair Stewart, and it's been a real pleasure these last 3 hours to have been joined by so many of my friends and new friends. Thoroughly enjoyed your company, and I hope you'll join me again Friday at 8, and then next weekend. Till then, bye-bye.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to this afternoon, and the UK is looking dry with sunny spells for many, those scattered showers for coastal areas. Plenty of sunny spells across the southwest of England this afternoon. Dry in the east, those scattered showers will continue pushing into the west, feeling cold, particularly in the wind. Across the southeast of England, and a mixture of sunny spells and showers, feeling colder than recent days with temperatures reaching 8 Celsius in London. Coastal showers will continue in Wales, though elsewhere it will be a generally dry day with sunny spells, a chilly day with blustery winds. A widely dry day across northwest England, though there may be a few showers in the far east. Plenty of sunny spells, but feeling chilly elsewhere, especially in the blustery winds along the coast. Scattered blustery showers will continue to affect northeastern England this afternoon, mostly dry away from coasts with plenty of sunny spells there too. For Scotland, it will be a bright and mostly dry afternoon with sunny spells. Some blustery showers will continue across northern and eastern coasts, feeling noticeably colder than of late. A mainly dry afternoon across Northern Ireland with plenty of sunny intervals. The odd shower will continue across northern coasts, feeling chilly with temperatures reaching around 8 Celsius in Belfast. Showers easing into this evening, though with plenty